All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by my friend and author, Rachel Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for actually sending me info on this stream. You reached out like last week, and we have to kind of avoid what exactly we're going to be discussing today because it can be a little bit of a sensitive topic. And just a heads up for anybody out there, this might be a difficult topic for some people to listen to because we're going to be discussing the termination of children, fetuses, also known as abortion. But we want to try to avoid that word today as we go through the stream, just to avoid any TOS. Although I looked online and there were still many videos of Christians criticizing these laws and such, but
yeah,
maybe let you introduce the topic. You reached out to me because of a trend that it seems to be developing on TikTok. Do you want to kind of fill people in on what we're actually going to be talking about today?
Yeah, definitely. So I was doing some research for a paper I'm writing. I'm actually working on a really exciting paper that's going to be published in a theological seminary journal.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to be presenting that paper live to seminary students in Moscow via, the internet. So very exciting stuff. And I'm going to be talking about feminism and how its roots come out of the occult and pre-Christian paganism and why we're seeing this neo-pagan revival and how it's tied into feminism and all the social movements, right? So as I'm researching this, I keep finding on social media, like when I'm searching things and whatnot, to find out like let's check in on the pagans. Let's see what they're up to. And I saw that on TikTok and even on Instagram. It's more on TikTok because you can get away with it easier there.
Yeah.
I saw several witches. There's a very popular hashtag. It's hashtag witch talk on TikTok. And today when I checked it, it had over 49 billion views.
Oh my
Hashtag witch talk has over 49 billion views. And there are many popular witches with big followings there sharing how to make your termination into a religious ritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's a lot of discussion about the laws around termination in the United States right now, and different states passing different things and stuff like that. But as part of this, I mean, you could think of it as like a bit of a legal workaround because they're trying to kind of abuse and misuse the religious freedom laws. But there's a long history of this. So if you guys go back to the 1960s, witchcraft had been illegal in the United States since the founding. There had always been laws on the books in almost every state that it made witchcraft illegal. In the 60s, a witch from the Czech Republic, it would be modern day Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, She came as a refugee after World War II and settled in San Francisco. Her name was Zuzana Budapest, and she was the first witch to successfully use religious freedom laws to get witchcraft made legal in the United States, in the state of California. And she started the first legal witch coven here called the Susan B. Anthony Coven #1. Um, Yes. And she was like very, very active in feminism. She's a lesbian. She's like definitely one of the like lesbian separatist type of feminist witches. And she kind of led the charge. And here we are, 50 years later. And we have this big popular thing on TikTok where modern day witches are teaching young girls how to not only cross state lines or use telehealth medicine to acquire terminations, but to make those terminations into ritual religious practices in
Right.
their witchcraft practice.
Right.
So I
And
was like, oh, I got to tell Patrick about this and see what he thinks because,
well, and that's why I mean, some people may not be able to stomach some of the stuff we'll be talking about. For example, one TikTok shows a woman witch talking about how she has this little bowl and she's telling girls to put the parts of the terminated entity into this as a way in which to make their rituals more efficacious and to see how the magical transformation of the entity into creating a new life for yourself. So if you have new goals, this is a really efficacious way to acquire your new goals. Maybe you want to start a new life or a new job or you want to do something. Well, just
yeah,
use your terminated entity and use it in a ritualistic magical practice. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And in conjunction with this, we're going to be describing first opening up on, what exactly is magic. This is always hard for people to sort of wrap their minds around because as Christians, and we're going to be using scripture to look at what the Bible says about child sacrifice. We're going to be looking at the ancient origins, particularly in Carthage and the Phoenicians, worship in regards to sacrifices offered to Moloch and Baal. And then we're going to be getting into how this is spreading amongst young people through the social medias, particularly through TikTok.
yeah,
And we're going to be looking at statistics and all type of stuff. So buckle in if this is something that you're interested in hearing about, because I'm sure a lot of people's eyes are going to be open. But if you're sensitive to these topics, I just warning you now, this stream might not be for you.
yeah. Definitely it's heavier material. It's not fun, lighthearted stuff by any stretch, but I think there's a tendency, even among those of us who are like serious Christians, to see these young girls on TikTok and laugh at, like, hand wave it away, laugh it off. Oh, they're young, they're silly. They just want attention, they just want clicks, they just want likes. I'm sure there's some of that, but we're going to talk about some people tonight also who are very serious about this. And they are
Yep.
not just TikTok witches, they are serious academics at some of the
Yes.
highest institutions in the country who have PhDs. Some of these people are very influential. And so I just would say maybe don't laugh it off initially as something super silly, because there's some very influential and very powerful people who do believe in this stuff, even if you don't.
Right. Absolutely. So to begin, I think now I was talking with Rachel. If anybody's new, I know we have a lot of new subscribers over on this channel, especially in the last couple months. I want to describe what exactly magic is, because people think, oh, well, we're Christians, we don't believe in magic. Well, we don't believe in practicing magic, but if you read scripture, especially the Old Testament, it is explicit that magic does work to some degree. It is detrimental to your spiritual health. And um, we're going to be describing what exactly these practices are. So, to begin, what is magic? To put it in its most crude terms, and it's going to help understand when we watch these TikTok videos what these girls think they're doing with their rituals. It has to do with the manifestation of one's desire or will. And you can use all types of magic: sigil magic, ritual magic, invocation magic, sex magic. There's all types of magical practices in which you ceremonially or ritualistically imbue your desire or will into something so that it can then be manifested later in the future. So this is done by a process known as sympathetic magic or the law of correspondences. And it has to do with the understanding that like affects like. And I wanted to bring this up for people here. So, the term sympathetic magic actually gets going with a scholar in the late 19th century, early 20th century. His name's James George Fraser. And this is kind of fallen out of favor by some scholars because he has some sentiments that aren't politically correct anymore, but he is the one that really develops what exactly magic is and how it differentiates in aspects of ritual within a religious context or whatnot. So one of the big differences between like a Christian ritual or even a Christian miracle and magic is that magic has to do with the fulfillment of my desire, and miracles from a Christian perspective has to do with the fulfillment of God's desire. So if maybe you prayed for something to happen and maybe it does occur, maybe somebody's sick, is able to get healthy, we believe this to be God's will, not exactly the manifestation of our will. And so if you guys have the Golden Bough, this is a really important religious text, or for religious studies, rather. It's not a religious text, but a scholastic understanding of magic and religion. In chapter 3, he goes into magic and religion. I just want to read this paragraph. So this is where this is coming from. I'm not using Wikipedia as a source per se. I have the book right here. But he says, if we analyze the principles of thought on which magic is based, they will probably be found to resolve themselves into two. First, that like produces like, or that an effect resembles its cause. And second, that things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. This is called the law of contagion or law of contact. The former principle, here it is, may be called the law of similarity, and the latter the law of contact or contagion. From the first of these principles, namely the law of similarity, the magician infers that he can produce any effect he desires merely by imitating it. From the second, he infers that whatever he does to a material object will affect equally the person with whom the object was once in contact, whether it be formed part of his body or not. And so when we think of shamans wearing deer antlers or different animal skins, that has to do with getting in contact with the spirit of that entity. And this is where words, colors, all this type of stuff, when we look at rituals, this is what the magic ritualistic process is trying to do, is trying to connect through a correspondence, a sympathetic connection, and pass energy through these laws of sympathy. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, in this current age we live in, where there's kind of like a dichotomy between religion and science, and we've seen a lot of people kind of fall away from Christianity because they just think that scientific rationalism and empiricism are the only things that exist. And, nobody's ever proved the metaphysical, nobody's proved, spirits or magic or things like that. That a lot of people, again, kind of discount this.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you are a believing Christian, like you said, it's mentioned all through the Bible and the writings of the church fathers. We have several saints who, a couple of them were like magicians themselves prior
Right.
to becoming saints and things like that. So if you believe that, Christianity is true, then we know that there is, projection of will and away from the will of God, and we call that evil. And so these things are real, and they're present from the beginning of the Old Testament all the way through. So it's a little bit naive for Christians to think that that was like old-timey stuff that doesn't exist or go on anymore. And we're going to talk a little bit about how almost every indigenous or pagan religion that's ever existed has elements of magic, shamanism, and this kind of stuff in them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a Christian idea. Almost every culture around the world knows that these things have some efficacy, right? So
Right.
even if you're kind of skeptical and you don't believe that this stuff happens, the people who do believe that this works are willing to terminate children in order to enhance the effect of that. So
Right.
that's
And that's
that's why
what
it's important to understand what Patrick just explained about how they believe this stuff works.
exactly. And it, again, before I became Christian, I did explore some of this magical thinking, and I can tell you for a fact it's absolutely real. It's absolutely real, but there's an exchange whenever you get what it is that you desire. There's a spiritual exchange, and this has to do with the slow process for some people. Some explicit do it very quickly of the selling of your soul. You're losing a piece of
Yeah.
yourself every time you manifest these desires. And so, why child or human sacrifice? It's because cultures and traditions that perform such practices believe that human life is the most powerful energetic transfer that you can use to make these rituals efficacious. And that's why we find this, as Rachel was saying, throughout ancient cultures. And we're going to be highlighting specifically, I mean, you find it in ancient Greek culture. We have an academic article, or I pulled one up that we'll see today. We're not going to read it or anything, but this is a scholastic uh, discovery on the termination processes within ancient Greece and how this related to offerings to gods and such. But Carthage, in particular, was a Phoenician stronghold before Christ. This is roughly between like 800 BC to like 100 BC before the Romans destroyed Carthage and took it over. And when we look at some of the Bible verses, it's going to actually be specific references to these practices that were happening at Carthage. So that is why, again, the human sacrifice. And the point then, as we move through, beginning with sort of these general understanding and some of these ancient frameworks, is to see that these practices aren't done away with. They are absolutely present. And what we're witnessing in our culture, something I've said and Rachel has talked about a lot, is that we're actually denigrating and moving back
Yeah.
to a sort of pagan world. And so we'll be looking at statistics all around the world. And unfortunately, this is one of the sad parts, is we'll see that Russia, in one of our Orthodox countries, is actually the highest rate of child termination in the world. So yeah. Before we get into anything in particular, Rachel, maybe we can start with Bible verses. Anything you want to say?
Just one note on the Russia thing. If people are kind of curious, like why Russia, how Russia,
Hmm.
being an Orthodox nation for like what 800 years before the Bolshevik Revolution, the way that Russia became the country that has the most terminations is due to a wonderful woman whose memory I'm trying to revive so that everybody can know who she is. Her name, you might have heard me talk about her before, but I'm going to just reiterate in case people haven't heard. Her name was Alexandra Kollontai, and she was a high-ranking Bolshevik woman. She was the Commissar for Social Welfare under Lenin, and she was very much responsible in large part for a lot of the atrocities that happened to the Orthodox Church right after the 1917 revolution. She was the one who decided, you know what? We should take all the monasteries because we're trying to get rid of private property anyway. We need to reclaim all the monasteries, the land they're on, the wealth they have, drive out the monks and the priests, force them to renounce their faith. And there were massacres that happened. There was all kinds of untold horrors that happened because of this. And she was like the primary architect of the state seizing those monasteries. But another thing she did that it's kind of been like lost to history because of the Cold War and language barriers and other things like this. Um, she was responsible for making abortion not only legal, but paid for by the state, by the nation of Russia in state hospitals with
Mhm.
no restrictions, no questions asked, no limits of any kind. And she also was responsible for making Russia the first nation to remove marriage as a sacrament of the church and make it completely just a legal contract of the
Right.
state. A very flimsy one. Like they almost had no fault divorce right from the gate there. So within, I think, 9.5 years, by the time Stalin came to power, they had 3 terminations for every one live birth in Russia. It devastated the birth rate there. And they ushered in, I mean, forcefully at the barrel of a gun, ushered in state atheism and tried to just eradicate Christianity. And immediately what we see is not this secular humanist utopia that you hear Matt Dillahunty and people like that talk about, where we're all going to be reasonable and there's going to be flourishing and there's going to be well-being and flourishing and all these terms they love to use. Immediately what happens is child sacrifice termination on a mass scale, um, complete eradication of the family unit, children being raised in state daycares called creches, and then, of course, the whole Gulag Archipelago situation that everybody's pretty familiar with.
Hmm.
So, just all that to say that all it took was one woman to say, we should make this legal. We should make this like a humanist issue. And we're going to get rid of this silly Christianity stuff. And you go straight back to what looks exactly like Moloch worship to me. So to me, like this secular humanist front that atheists and scientists talk about, it's very bizarre how whenever they get their way and they accomplish what they want, it ends up looking like ancient Aztec, pyramid worship. It looks like ancient Carthage. It looks like Moloch worship, right?
Right.
So that's how Russia got into the position that it's in now.
And Patriarch Krill has made a public statement. I saw this was a couple weeks ago that he is pushing Russia to actually ban abortion, termination of children. For he said this is one of the worst tragedies to the Russian people, and that this needs to be stopped immediately because it's devastating the population and their understanding of the sacredness of life and such. So the Orthodox Church is trying to push
Yes,
against, unfortunately, some of these practices that are very much ingrained in Slavic and Russian culture. Because when we look at some of the countries with the highest rates of child termination, unfortunately, many of them are former Soviet Union countries or Eastern Russia.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that historical note to help people understand, like, kind of how did it get there? Because we in America might not know of Kollontai on a large scale, but she was extremely influential, probably one of the most influential people of the first half of the 20th century in not only Russia, but it was like the whole former Russian Empire and then the Soviet satellite countries. So she was also an ambassador under Stalin to Sweden, to Norway. She spent a lot of time in Germany. She was educated in England with some British elites. And the Fabian Society. So she was very connected, very well educated. She spoke like 5 or 6 different languages. She was involved in espionage, and she was incredibly influential. And she wrote prolifically. If you go to Marxist.org, not that you'd want to, but if you do, and you look her up, you'll see that she was cranking out literature, pamphlets. She even started writing fiction because she knew fiction was a good way to reach women. So her legacy is just so incredibly influential and strong in that area of the world, and it's kind of persisting to this day, although like you said, the Orthodox churches there are trying to regain a foothold and have some counterbalance to that. But one woman, she's kind of like their Margaret Sanger, but like 100 times worse.
Yeah. So to begin, I thought maybe we can highlight that the ancient origins of this stuff is not uncommon. And as we said, ancient Carthage, there was a push in the sort of the mid 20th century to try to explain away that this was overhyped by Christians and people talking about these sacrifices. However, I have, and thank you to Rachel finding so much of this stuff and sharing it with me, that no, we now have contemporary evidence, but also multiple scholars have uncovered that no, this was absolutely happening. And when we go through the Bible verses, which we're getting ready to hear in a few, when it talks about Topheth, it's talking about the actual place here at Carthage where these sacrifices were happening. And so here in this article, Dr. Josephine Quinn of Oxford University's Faculty of Classics, the author of the paper, said it's becoming increasingly clear that the stories about Carthaginian sacrifice of children are true. This is something the Romans and Greeks said the Carthaginians did, and it was part of the popular history of Carthage in the 18th and 19th century. But in the 20th century, people increasingly took the view that this was racist propaganda on the part of the Greeks and Romans against their political enemy, that of the Phoenicians, this was one of their capital hubs, and that Carthage should be saved from this terrible slander. What we are saying now is that the archaeological, literary, and documentary evidence for child sacrifice is overwhelming, and that instead of dismissing it out of hand, we should try to understand it. And so here it highlights that this is modern day Tunisia, and that from 800 BC to 146 BC until the Romans destroyed the Phoenician stronghold of Carthage, which then they took over. So It says children, both male and female, and mostly a few weeks old, were sacrificed by the Carthaginians at locations known as Tophets. And again, when we read the Bible verses, they're going to make explicit reference to this in the Old Testament. The practice was also carried out by their neighbors at other Phoenician colonies in Sicily, Sardinia, and Malta. Dedications from the children's parents to the gods are inscribed on slabs of stone above their cremated remains, ending with the explanation that the god or gods concerned had heard my voice and blessed me. So that's kind of what I wanted to get out of this article here. And here's another article. Again, this was from 1987, and this was a scholastic, research into Carthage, and that relics of Carthage show brutality amid the good life. And that's what this article highlights as well. So 175 pieces in Carthaginian collection, whose 5-month display. Oh, here it is. But the collection also included cremation urns and religious paraphernalia of the kind used to sacrifice some 20,000 children from about 800 BC until the Roman invaders of 146. Now, these are two totally different articles, but again, it's the exact same research. That's why I wanted to bring that up, that this isn't just like an offshoot or some random piece of research.
Only 20,000 in the span of 650 years.
Yeah, I doubt that.
That's rookie numbers compared to what we do now.
Exactly. And we're going to be looking at the numbers. I want to show you guys the top 10 states here in the United States that have the highest rates of termination, as well as the top 10 countries in the world and the top 10 countries that have the least amount. And you'll be surprised which countries actually have the least amount of terminations. But to give us a sort of religious context for today's conversation, I just want to go through a few verses. And Rachel, feel free to butt in if there's anything you want to say. Leviticus 18:21, you shall not give any of your offspring to offer them to Moloch, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. And so we scroll down here to Deuteronomy. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination, one who practices witchcraft, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer. 2 Kings. Then he took his eldest son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering on the wall. And there came great wrath against Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their own land. And then here, moreover, he burned incense in the valley of Ben Hinnom. Well, this valley is again a reference, and I have a section here again in James George Fraser's The Golden Bough. I was doing a little research and found that he has a whole section here talking about evidence of Baal and Moloch worship, and he highlights that this Hinnom, this valley, is actually again related back to Carthage. So we see direct references here in 2 Chronicles 28:3. They made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire and practiced divination and enchantments and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him. That is 2 Kings 17:17. Similar one here. Where is oh, here it is. Here's Topheth. They have built the high places of Topheth. Well, we just saw, again, related to this article here, that Tophets or Topheths are referring to these places in which these sacrifices were taking place, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, again, which James George Fraser highlights as back in Carthage, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, and it did not come into my mind. Here's Leviticus 22-5. You shall also say to the sons of Israel, any man from the sons of Israel or from the alien sojourning in Israel who gives any of his offerings to Moloch shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will also set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Moloch, so as to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. If the people of the land, however, should ever disregard that man when he gives any of his offspring to Moloch, so as not to put him death, then I myself will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off from among their people, both him and all those who play the harlot after him, by playing the harlot after Moloch. Here is a section from Psalm, which is lamenting the fact that the Hebrews were practicing these sacrifices, but they mingled with the nations and learned their practices and served their idols, which became the snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. Here's in Jeremiah, one of our prophets. They built the high places of Baal that are in the valley of Ben Hinnom to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire to Moloch, which I had not commanded them, nor had I entered my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. So you guys get the point, and I'm going to share this link if anybody wants to see more of these verses here. Anything you want to say, Rachel?
Just that's kind of another thing that lends credit to the Bible, right? To the historical record of the Old Testament. A lot of this is from some of the books that chronicle a lot of that stuff. And if scientists are finding archaeological evidence of this, recently in the last few years, kind of lends some credit, doesn't it, to the Bible? And when it says they followed the nations and started worshiping their idols and sacrificing their children to their demons, we're going to find out that too has not gone away. That's still here. And it's one of the primary, when we were talking about people using the religious freedom argument to say that termination is a sacrament for them.
Right.
It's not just the Satanic Temple, you guys. There's lots of indigenous tribes who are saying that termination has always been part of their ritual religious practice, and that it's just a feature of Christian white colonialism to take that away from them, because it's always been an honored sacred practice going back throughout their history. And that is something that's true. It's kind of this myth of the noble savage stuff, where it's like people have this idea that prior to white Christians coming to the New World, everybody was just smoking peace pipes and loving on Mama Earth and just talking to all the wildlife, forest animals, like they're just so peaceful and so sweet and nice, and they never did anything that we would consider immoral. We just wanted to steal their land because we were greedy. There was more to it than that. I'm not saying that every atrocity committed by whites or Christians was a good thing at all.
Right.
Not saying that, but I'm saying that these cultures had practices that Christians then and now would find to be abominable, and this was one of them. Every pagan indigenous culture around the world has this as part of their ritual religious practice.
Yeah.
So you can see how to Christians, discovering people like this for the first time, seeing them do this, would have certain feelings about it, I guess you could say.
And I wanted to read this, if you indulge me just for a minute. There's this ginormous paragraph here, and this is from a secular scholar. So this is not a Christian or anything like this. This is one of the founders of the sort of academic study of religious studies. And this is on, if you have the Golden Bough, this is on page 266. He says, among the Semites, the practice of sacrificing their children was not confined to kings. In times of great calamities, such as pestilence, drought, or defeat in war, the Phoenicians used to sacrifice one of their dearest to Baal. Phoenician history says an ancient writer is full of such sacrifices. The writer of a dialogue ascribed to Plato observes that the Carthaginians immolated human beings as if it were a right and lawful to do so. And when we look at some of the language today, that's why I wanted to read it. We're going to see this exact thing. It's talking about rights, my reproductive rights. This should be law, right? So again, we see this right here. He adds, even sacrifice their own sons to Baal. Among the Canaanites or aboriginal inhabitants of Palestine, whom the invading Israelites conquered but did not exterminate, the grisly custom of burning their children in honor of Baal or Moloch seems to have been a regular practice. To the best representatives of the Hebrew people, the authors of their noble literature, such rites were abhorrent, and they warned their fellow countrymen against participating in them. And this is a Bible quote, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found with thee anyone that maketh his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one that useth divination, one that practiceth augury. Augury has to do with like watching birds as omens and stuff like this, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a consulter with the familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For whoever doeth these things is an abomination unto the Lord, and doeth and because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. And he says again, we read, and thou shalt not give any of thy seed to pass through the fire to Moloch. Whatever effect these warnings may have had in their earlier days, the Israelite history, there is abundant evidence that in later times the Hebrews lapsed, or rather perhaps relapsed, into that congenial mire of superstition from which the higher spirits of the nation struggle too often in vain to rescue them. The psalmist laments that his erring countrymen mingled themselves with the nations and learned their works, and they served their idols and became a snare unto them. Yeah, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto demons, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and their daughters, from whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. And so then he highlights that when we remember, however, that the Israelites were of the same Semitic stock as the population they conquered and professed to despise, and that the practice of human sacrifice is attested for many branches of the Semitic race, we shall perhaps incline to surmise that those chosen people may have brought with them into Palestine the seeds which afterwards sprang up and bore such ghastly fruit in the valley of Hinnom, that is Carthage. So just wanted to highlight, don't want to make this a book reading, but the point is that this is abundant evidence for the ancient practice.
Yeah, and you might have noticed that in any of these ancient texts that we're reading from the perspective of the people involved in these practices, there was no concept of this is just a clump of cells. It doesn't have personhood until it's sentient or can, is viable outside none of this kind of thing. It was always their sons and daughters. It was never their clumps of cells or anything. So these people definitely had the idea that they were terminating human beings, not clumps of cells. So,
Yeah, absolutely. They did not have these sort of modern frameworks to sort of explain away what they were doing.
yeah.
Um, Now, you want to kind of cover some more of these articles? Or you want to get into the TikTok stuff? Where do you want to go next?
Maybe we should do the TikTok stuff first so that
Okay,
we can use the articles to kind of
give further context.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So let me get the speaker going and pull this up right here. So here is again, shout out to Rachel for her research because I was totally oblivious to the prevalence of this over on TikTok. But we can find multiple TikToks actually advocating. Many Christians are also condemning, but advocating for this stuff. And so here's one of the first ones. We'll watch this and then we'll comment on it.
I think it's finally time that we talk about abortion magic. So first, what's magic? I personally define magic as an amplification of your will, because you have your will and your choice and your voice, and you will do what you want with it. Magic is the amplifier. It's the way that your will is woven into the physical world, into mother. So when I say abortion magic, what I mean is how your will of deciding to have an abortion is amplified in your life through spirit. Any womb who has ever been pregnant knows that when you get pregnant, your entire life changes. Bringing new life into the world is indeed a magical task. My personal experience with abortion and pregnancy, when I decided to have an abortion, I used my will and my voice and my choice to say, I'm not going to allow my life to go in this direction anymore. That was amplified in everything around me. I lost not only my child through that choice, I lost my job, I lost friends, I lost the securities that I had around me, some of them. You're actively choosing to call death. And you're not just calling death for yourself, because this death is intrinsically tied to your blood and your bloodline, which means it's going to affect all of your descendants forever, if you ever do have children outside of this pregnancy that you have decided to abort. Because any magic that is tied to your blood, that is tethered to your blood, will also be tethered to your descendants. Blood magic should not be taken lightly. It's very serious. So as you actively call death into the physical, you're still pregnant. You still got pregnant, which means that there's still going to be new life of some kind birthed into the world from you. And since you're actively calling death onto certain parts of your life, actively, you have to decide what you want to nurture and what you want to grow. Personally, in my abortion magic, I have seen that this cycle does last the 9 months. And with any birth, you don't necessarily know what you're birthing. Generally speaking, you know that you are birthing life into the world. But in all wombs, abortion magic is a way for you and your descendants to meet Mother Spirit, to meet the goddess, to meet yourself, the new version of yourself that you want to be. Also, through abortion magic, it doesn't just affect your descendants. It is blood magic, so it will also affect your ancestral lineage. Because as you call death in your life with that choice of having an abortion, there are also cycles that have been passed down to you that must die, so they can be reborn into something new. With death comes life. I wanted to make this video just with everything that's going on in America right now. So I'm here for conversation, and if you have questions, those two. I think it's finally time.
Okay.
Well, we just got raided by the Crucible chat, and they jumped in at like the most insane time. They're like, "Whoa, what are we watching?"
Welcome, Crucibles. So glad you guys joined us, and smash that like for everybody who's here. We do have I want to thank Hops becoming a new COTEL crew member, and Ortho Eric through $1.99 says, "Suffer not the witch to live." So true. So Rachel, we got more videos to get into, but any initial comments?
Well, she kind of said it all. The reason I like this girl's account I like because she just comes right out and tells you. She tells you this is about goddess worship, that it's about projecting your own will, manifesting things for yourself. And this is something like when Patrick went over the laws of magic and how this works, this is something most Gen Z girls do without even knowing it's what they're doing. I mean,
Right.
just me like knowing other girls that are into fitness stuff, they're constantly talking about vision boards and manifesting their desires and the law of attraction and all of this kind of stuff. And they don't even realize they're following like magic and occult principles when they're doing this sort of thing. So when they stumble upon something like this, a lot of us here with our backgrounds, generally, we're going to be like, whoa, this is crazy stuff. But to this younger generation, it's very like it goes along with everything they've been raised with. Female empowerment, women using their sexual power to project their will and manipulate events. All of the woke stuff fits right in. Smashing the patriarchy. This is what better way to smash the patriarchy. If you guys saw on my channel the clip of me calling into a termination debate and challenging a girl named Nikki. She goes by Beat the Cult. She's an atheist. She's an anti-Christian. And I asked her this really incredible question to get to the heart of what she actually believes, because she's somebody who's very good at gaslighting and making it sound like she's very very sensitive and sympathetic, but she just can't buy into Christianity, and that's not true at all. And so I asked her this question. I said, with the, projections that we could have artificial womb technology in the next decade, let's just say that happens. I don't think it will, but let's just pretend it does. And they have artificial wombs. And a lady walks into a Planned Parenthood and she's, 14 weeks along and she wants a termination. And the technician says, "Good news, ma'am. You no longer have to choose to terminate this child. We can simply remove it, put it in an artificial womb. It doesn't have to die, and it can grow and have a life, and it'll get adopted. We have like a whole list of people waiting to adopt these children." If that happened, I asked Nikki, would you still advocate for termination rights? And she said yes, because that's the woman's choice. And what that told me was, it's not about women who are in tough situations. It's not about oh, I don't know if I can do motherhood. I might not have money, or the dad left, or I'm feeling pressure. It's not really about that. It's really about women not having a monopoly on force, using this as a way to have power, specifically over men. because what Nikki told me was she just wants the right to kill a man's baby is what that's really what she's concerned with. It's not whether it's going to affect her life or anything like that, because I gave her a hypothetical that would release her from all responsibility. She just doesn't want that person to exist because that person is made up of 50% a man, and she wants the choice. She doesn't want him to have a choice or anything like that. So the reason I like this particular video we just watched is because she kind of comes right out and says that I am the decider. I'm the person who decides who lives and who dies. I have power over death. I have power over life. And it gives them this, like she said, it's a blood magic ritual, and they find it empowering. They think that it connects them to like their ancient bloodlines, and they think they're tapping into some very powerful magic here. And she said in the beginning, I wanted to know that I was projecting my will of what I want for my life. I'm the one who decides the direction my life is going to go. So when I say feminism is a direct middle finger to God the Father, I'm not exaggerating. You can ask these very people and they'll tell you.
Yeah, they're quite explicit with it.
Yeah.
Here's another one I want us to check out that I saw. This is she initially comments, but then you'll see the video that I really want to highlight right after. So,
altar for her abortion. Look at the last thing she put on her altar.
And place the container of which you plan to put the products of conception or the fetal remains within, to catch that after you've passed it, and save it for later when we find a way to bury or otherwise to where we find a way to properly dispose of the fetal remains in a way that gives reverence and respect and support to this sacred abortion experience.
So she doesn't respect her baby, but she does care about having a sacred abortion experience.
okay, we don't need to hear her talk, but the point was to highlight that the woman that was again educating on TikTok is literally showing them like, hey, you put your fetal remains in this cup and put it on your altar.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. So we're not exaggerating. We're not like making up that, you're probably thinking, oh, they're just talking in, generalities. They're just being symbolic. Oh no, they're saying like actually collect the products of the conception and use them in ceremonial ritual magic. And this is a girl that's the girl that Patrick just showed, the person who was instructing how to put together the altar. I think she has a pretty big following because she does like yoga and stuff like that. So yeah, this is like hot yoga pants Instagram models who are also going to teach you how to do ritual termination magic. It's totally insane, but it's actually like, to those of us who aren't 20-something-year-old girls that watch TikTok all day, it seems crazy to us, and we wouldn't even know about it if it weren't for maybe a stream like this. But it's actually like incredibly common and really popular. Like I said, look at how many views it says right here. Abortion is magic ritual, 2.7 million views. So this is not like it's not a tiny niche with like 2 people. This is like they're creating like this new blend, right? So in this postmodern world where we've rejected metaphysics and we're concerned with science and secular humanism, women especially want this spiritual dimension to life, and they're all feminists, all of them. You like, unless you're a weirdo like me, you are a feminist, right? That's why everybody thinks Rach is crazy, because the default setting is feminism. All these girls from the time they were born have been indoctrinated with it. They're Taylor Swift fans, they're Beyonce fans. Every movie, every TV show, even the children's shows that they've watched tell them they're a strong, independent woman. They have to tap into their goddess energy. This stuff is super normal. If you go to any of these music festivals that are so popular with the 20-somethings, like Coachella and all the psychedelic music festival stuff, the goddess worship component is huge there. Huge. I've found websites for many of these festivals that have explicit like goddess worship references in them. It's not hidden at all. Yeah. And so they're trying to like create this neo-pagan kind of religious replacement that incorporates the woke stuff and the feminism stuff and their idea of like religious freedom and human rights, and the patriarchy can't tell me what to do with my body, and this is the perfect fit. It's like their way to reconcile these things.
Right. Keenan threw in a super chat. He said, "Can you pin the Dono chat?" And in the Dono chat, for anybody watching, the Dono chat and the Streamlabs link are both in the video description. I just do that so you can choose one of the two. So if you prefer to use Dono chat, which I would be very appreciative of, that's the first link, and the second link is Streamlabs if anybody wants to use that. And it looks like we have a couple super chats over on the Dono chat. First one comes in from RC, throws in $10, says, "Christ is Lord." Well, absolutely. And thank you very much, RC. Ellie throws in $20. Thank you very much, Ellie. And she says, "Ceterum senso Carthaginium esse delendum." So Cato wasn't that wrong. I'm not sure what the reference. I don't know who Cato is, but thank you very much for the super chat, Ellie. I do appreciate. And Blue Skittle just threw in $10, says, "I don't know how these people think they're the moral ones fighting for justice." Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
can try to explain that, just because, I've spent the last several years trying to understand these people and where they're coming from with it. And the reason they think they're the moral ones is because they have been taught, and in a way, they're right about this. So Christianity is a patriarchal religion.
Yes.
God the Father, Christ the Son, the Holy Spirit, none of them are female. Okay. No matter what these Christian feminist weirdos try to tell you, we have patriarchs, we have patriarchates. It is a patriarchal religion by nature. Now, patriarchy was never seen as a bad thing. It simply means rule by the father. That's all the word means. But second wave feminism took that term and made it a pejorative term that is now synonymous with oppression, slavery, and injustice. So, if you were born after 1960, when you hear patriarchy, you think slavery, injustice, oppression. You think exploitation of Mother Earth. And so, in the 60s and 70s, among the feminists, there was this huge revival of goddess worship. Wicca had just been created and became extremely popular, various forms of witchcraft. The return to the land hippie movement, where all the hippies were doing like the nature worship stuff. That's why you always see ecofeminism, veganism, and feminism tied in together. You also see communism, right? Hippie communes. It's just the flip side, the polar opposite of what Christianity is, with a family unit, with rule by the father, with how do we see God the Father? We see him as a just and loving God who's protective of us, but will also, dispense justice as needed. Well, so these young women who want to smash the patriarchy and have been told that, their parents' Christianity is oppression and their daddy is a mean guy who wants to give them rules and ruin all their fun, they go off to college, they go off to university, because we tell all women that they must. You're a big loser and you're never going to be anything if you don't go to college. So you go to college and you encounter these groups, you encounter these belief systems, the New Age, neo-paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, green witchcraft. There's every flavor. And they have some ties to the ancient paganism, but mostly they're like a modern social justice blend, like this revival is. So these young girls who want some kind of higher belief, they want a religious, spiritual element to their life. They feel like, I can't be Christian because then I'd be an oppressor. So I need a religion. Well, I can't do Islam because that's also oppressive. Can't do
Right.
Christianity, that's out. Judaism's tough to get into. Not a whole lot of converts, right? It's hard to convert. So this stuff is perfect because it blends all the female empowerment, the sexual liberation, the projecting of your will, and your human rights, social justice, woke stuff just fits right in. And it's just super popular. It's a really easy, logical next step from that political position that most young women feel they have to have. Because if you don't hold those views as a young woman today, you are ostracized. Like, you'll be bullied to death if you don't go along with this stuff.
Right.
So that's how they end up there.
I wanted to there was one that you sent me that I'm having trouble finding. It's the full version of the one that everybody's commenting on. It's like a 4-parter. I think
It's
this
this one. Yeah,
I think this one plays the whole thing, this woman here, but all of them
maybe.
have comments on them.
That girl right there you're pointing at, it was
Yeah.
hers, and she did parts 1 through 4, but I couldn't find part 2. I think she may have said something in that video that made her take it down.
Oh.
So I only was able to find 1, 3, and 4. But if you go to her, what I don't know if it says what part that is.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I was having trouble finding all the parts as well when I went to hers, but just just to play a few of these. Here is a woman talking about it. I think
Massive, huge trigger warning.
so. She's telling people trigger warning.
Sensitive, and it is triggering.
How to practice abortion as a magical ritual. Part 1. My qualifications for teaching this: I am a witch who has had abortions and has used them as rituals. I did an abortion and conception ritualistically. There's a life that has been conceived. So what life, new life for yourself, are you conceiving? Maybe it's a new way of living. Maybe it's a new job, a new career. Maybe it's a new passion project. Maybe it's literally everything in your life changes. What have you been working towards and wanting and wishing for and praying for? Because that conception is a door. And when we open doors, we can ask for more. So you have in mind what it is you're wanting to bring new life into the world for yourself, right? Because you're having the abortion, you're not actually bringing a new physical baby child life into the world, but you're bringing a new life for yourself. So we have that in mind. Well, you have that in mind. I've already done this. You have that in mind for your ritual. Second, abortion, a miscarriage, a C-section, an actual birth of, a baby child. So there is life that you are birthing. Again, life, a new life for yourself, something that process. You're calling an ending. You're calling death to things. A death to growth of something that's been growing in your life that no longer serves you, that you don't want around. And for me personally, this has been very ancestral.
Let's start off with the first bit.
Okay, I think. Let me see if she does part 2. No, I think she just comments on it. Yeah, I would
part
love
2 is the one I couldn't find.
But
I did
and then-
find 3 and 4.
where can I find those at? What was her?
If you just keep scrolling, you'll see that same background. See the backdrop she has? They all have that same backdrop. They should be there. Otherwise, I think I might have sent them to you.
Yeah, you did, and I was trying to find it. It's hard to pull up my text. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because not all my texts are on the computer. Okay, here we go. I found it. There we go. Oh, it's the currently unavailable. So that's the link that
They
you
might have
sent
taken
me.
it down.
Looks like they did.
It might only have maybe only part 1 still is up on her account then, because this did start to go viral. A lot of people started picking it up right around the time that I saw it. So, because Isabel Brown, the second girl there, did like a what the heck reaction to that part 1. But this first video you're looking at right now, that's her again talking about it. So
Yeah.
in a separate video.
So wild. I had an abortion in late 2021. Yeah, circumstances around it really fucking hard, like really, really difficult. But I already had one, and I just knew, I was like, this is what I got to do this time too. I could just, yeah. And if you hate me for it, eat it. I do not care. However, being a witch and like going through abortion is fucking nuts. With both of the pregnancies that I had, I've had dreams of giving birth. And I don't just mean like it's a dream. I don't mean like it's just like, oh, I saw it happen. No, it was like a full blown, can feel my uterus contracting and then like have really vivid images of having a child wrapped up in my arm. But now I know. I just had that dream recently. So now I know for this one, I didn't have the baby, but I am birthing new life for myself, because that is the power of abortion magic. So now that I had the dream that the baby's born, here comes new life for me. I'm so grateful to be a witch. See you next time. Dude, being a witch.
Yikes. And it looks like this is another woman who's
And it's real fat, I can make it fatter. Wanna see a magic trick bend over
no longer want to be pregnant. There's this magic trick. So very, very wholesome moral women here that are really in
Yeah.
favor of all this stuff. Dang, I wanted to find. Oh, is this the full one of this chick?
I think so.
Abortion can be a really cathartic procedure. I like to always have a candle going on my altar. So there's always light within the darkness. I also really like to add the abortion pills themselves to the altar to really bless the pills that we're going to be taking into our bodies during this process.
It makes you wonder how many times she's done this.
I know, right?
She's she says it like it's something she does every month. Like, oh, what I like to do is this, and then you know, I put a little potpourri in there, and then I do my dog pose, and then I take my crystals, and it's just like, this is what I mean, though. It's like they think that this is it kind of LARPy for some of them, yes, but also she's blessing her termination pills. She's building an altar and putting the pills on it, and so it's like, okay, you don't believe in God. The Christian God is bad, but you believe that blessing your termination pills on some kind of bizarre witchcraft altar is like liberating and empowering and good. And she's like, light in the darkness. A lot of them get sucked into the yoga stuff, man. Dumb as it sounds.
We got a super chat came in from Gargana G for $15. Says, do you think these people have a soul? And I would say, yeah, they do have a soul. But this is the thing about ritual magic is you slowly lose your soul, because this is the negotiation between Satan, the whole famous, selling your soul, writing your name on the contract. And certainly it can be that explicit. That's another form of magic. But to another degree, again, this is where Orthodoxy teaches that you slowly ingratiate yourself with these demonic practices, and you slowly lose yourself. And there is a point of no return, not in the sense that God rejects you, but your heart becomes so dark and hard that you won't be able to repent from it. And this is where, it's not God condemns these people, but they condemn themselves by these practices. And again, looking back at the verses that we read, the particular sacrifice of children is something that God does not find favorably at all. And so the fact that this is celebrated to such a degree is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, from a Christian perspective, that you are destroying image bearers of God. I mean, humans are God's most beloved creation. They're image bearers and icons of him. And so for you to destroy that so that you can manifest new life for yourself, like that girl said, to help along your new passion project, like I really want my herbal apothecary business to take off, so I need to have this termination so I can do a ritual, because I really want, it's like, for such a cheap thing, they're not even going to get to be rock stars. It's not even like they're the Rolling Stones selling their soul for like world fame and hookers and blow and like just 40 or 50 years of great fun. It's like they just want to do it so that they can, like, I don't know, work on their passion project. Like
Right.
I wish that the girl would have talked more about like what exactly she thought she was getting out of it, because I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah, what exactly they're using this energy to attain, because like you're highlighting, these are such low level goals to, again, to essentially destroy yourself in the process. And that's what they're doing. And so to get a little bit more money, or to, like you said, work on your passion project or whatever that may be, build your online following, this is ridiculous that people are willing to pursue those stuff. But it has to do with self-worship. And in one of the articles we'll highlight from 1926, somebody was talking about modern day Moloch worship. Very interesting article from looks like some type of journal or something. And they highlight this. The problem of this is excessive individualism, and that people begin to worship their base passions. And that's exactly what we see that our culture is doing, is is what Luciferianism is, or Satanism is, or Thelema is. It's ultimately the worship of oneself, which is you disconnecting yourself with God Almighty, because we as Christians are called to die to the world so that our wills can align with God's will. And so we repent whenever our wills fall out of line with God. That's the goal. And these people are all about the worship of whatever, infantile desire and wish they have. And the fact that they're using real human life to achieve it is, one, makes it incredibly powerful. So I do
Yeah.
not doubt that whatever this girl thinks she wants to get and is using, I'm sure she's achieving it. But what she's losing in exchange is her soul, which again is worth more than anything on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, to think that, we look back and think, oh, ancient people must have been so simple-minded, so simple-headed, to think that if they sacrificed their children, they would get like better crops. These
Right.
girls aren't even doing it for anything that important. It's like, I wouldn't be shocked if they were like, I really want to be able to afford all the stuff on my Amazon wish list, so I'm doing this.
Seriously.
Otherwise, I'm
Seriously.
not sure what it is. I mean, I know that remember when the witches cast spells against Trump when he was elected? By the way, the lady I was telling you guys about, Susanna Budapest, who started the first legal witch coven in the United States, she's still alive, and she was the one who led those witch spells against Trump.
Wow.
Yeah, she did a series of Facebook lives, like, leading ritual incantations against Trump. But what I was thinking about is, somebody in the comments actually mentioned this, how for all of my childhood growing up, and I have like a little TikTok video I made of this, of Bill Clinton always saying safe, legal, and rare. Nobody does this because they want to. People only do this if they get put in a position where they have no other option and it's a difficult choice and they suffer to go through it, but sometimes it's necessary and we have to respect that, safe, legal, and rare. Tell me this is still safe, legal, and rare when they're intentionally, this girl is on her second one. So clearly she knows how she's getting pregnant.
Right.
Clearly she knows how to prevent that, because you can get birth control pills in a lot of states now without even having to have a prescription.
Right.
And if you're not in a state that has that, you can often use telemedicine to get it. Walmart has $4 a month birth control prescriptions. So these
Wow.
girls know how to not do that. They're intentionally allowing it to happen so that when it does happen, they can use this in a ritual magic purpose.
Yeah.
So
Ed the
no,
Wave says, are these women deliberately getting pregnant for these rituals? And as you're highlighting, well, some of them
maybe.
absolutely are,
Yeah.
because they're doing it on repetitively. They're doing this multiple times.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I always heard, like, oh, this idea that girls just go and do this time after time. Oh, that doesn't happen. It's just not a thing. And it's like, a lot of them say it is a thing. I've seen multiple accounts talking about how they've had 2, 3, 4, even more than that.
Right.
So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, somebody said they couldn't stomach it. I told you guys, this is
yeah.
not for the faint-hearted. BMX 1966 throws in $5, says, hi, DPH, and to our beloved sister and mum, Rachel. Thank you,
Nice
BMX
homeschool
1960.
mom. We got the
That,
shirts now. Oh, we got
that's
the shirt
awesome.
on the Crucible merch website. So for
That's
all my base
awesome.
homeschool mom fans out there.
Go to the Crucible website, get yourself a sweatshirt. It's getting cold out there, so why the seasons are changing, to help support Rachel and Andrew, and get yourself a new sweatshirt. And then Tatiana, she threw in a $10 super chat and said, this goes well with your insane asylum stream, DPH. She may be happy to be a witch, but she won't be when she faces Christ. God bless, brother and sister in Christ. Yeah. I just did a stream on looking at insanity, the definition, and psychosis, and all this different stuff, and then comparing to, these people. You probably saw it, the chick that had a pig mask on that was rolling around in dirt in the bathroom. I mean, this is pure insanity, and that this is being celebrated or even normalized as progress is
Yeah.
indicative of a decaying society. And same thing when we watch these girls who are performing ritual magic regarding the termination of life.
Yeah. I mean, that girl kind of said it all. She was like, I'm bringing death into the world. I'm bringing life into the world, almost as though she is God. And I mean, that's kind of what witchcraft is when you really get down to it. Like you said, it's worship of self. It's deification of yourself, not through theosis, but through like my own divination of my own will. I am divine. I'm the Kali Ma. Again, this is like if you go back and look at all the pagan religions of ancient times, there was always at least one, if not multiple, goddess figures who saw death, life, fertility, sex, and war as their like dominions, which those are like the main features of human life on this earth. So, goddess worship was a huge thing in ancient times, and it's coming back with a vengeance because people think that the Christian God is like I said, your mean daddy who won't let you have fun. He won't let you just, have your full moon orgies and do whatever you want. So he's mean and oppressive. And we're going to do goddess worship and witchcraft because it's empowering. And I get to be God, basically, is what it is for them.
Right. Absolutely. And they, like you said, the sort of deification of oneself, because we as Christians believe this is where, it's not a Christian perspective to think that there's an overpopulation problem on the planet, because we believe that God, his will chooses every soul that comes on this planet. And so if you get pregnant, because it's not like you just have sex and you get pregnant. For some people, it's much more difficult than that. So we believe that God blesses people with life. And so what they're doing then is taking something that God has given and then deciding. That's why the first one we watched, when she talks about the invocation of the goddess of death, that's what they are taking something that is wholesome, that is pure, that is innocent, and then they're sacrificing it for their own desires. And this is a sort of self-worship, and it's sad that it's so prevalent in our society that young girls don't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
Thomas Aesthetics throws in $5. He says the other side of this issue is weak simp men who are continuing to go into these murderous witches. Yeah. No morality, no integrity. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the inability for men to control themselves, which is essentially what a simp is an absolute detriment to our society in every facet. And so the porn addictions, the sexualization, and that's why, again, a Christian worldview that says, hey, you got to stop that. You got to get in control of your sexual passions. This actually makes you more of a man. And when these men can't control their sexual urges, or, some witchy, progressive girl with blue hair allows them to sleep with them, the fact that they're going to be okay with this, to some degree, they're responsible for it as well.
Oh, definitely. And if you guys ever wonder, like Jay will talk all the time about how like the elites love Marxism and socialism, not because they really believe in it, but because it's like such a useful tool for their end goals. One of their favorite features of like the Marxist stuff that's like rampant in the colleges right now and the social justice stuff is it tells men number one, for you to have boundaries and masculinity is toxic and oppressive and bad, just like God the Father. You're mimicking the bad demiurge God of the Old Testament, who's like a meanie head. And it also tells men, you don't deserve a legacy. You don't deserve to own anything. You can't have private property. You shouldn't have any right to your own children. So these younger generations of men, I think one of the reasons we're seeing the simpocalypse explosion, where it's just like, how did we get so many young men who are like emasculated simps? It's because they believe that to care about their own seed, to care about their own legacy, to own anything, to build anything like that for themselves and for their family is like toxic and
Right.
bad. So they really kind of feel like, okay, well, I guess I can worship this goddess witch girlfriend I have, and I can, have something to fap to besides corn, So it's like that's one of the reasons why Marxism is pushed so heavily, because it really takes away any incentive for men to do what you just said, which is have self-control, have long-term thinking, and build something for themselves, build a family, build a legacy. Build a cathedral that you'll never see finished because it's going to take 400 years to build. Men
Right.
have no incentive to do that because they're told that those things are toxic and exploitative and bad.
Right.
So,
And like you said, these simp men are just as bad because they're worshiping their own desires, and it's usually it revolves around sex.
Yeah.
And that's how women, again, and you look at goddess worship, or you look at any of these sort of inverted structures, and it's always women use their sexuality to have power over men. And so men have to not let them have power over them through sexual their sexual appetite, by controlling themselves, thinking long term, like you said. One of the most empowering things as a man, our priest talked about this today, um how he viewed his life, and when he was married to the love of his life, and then when they had children and he was successful in building his career, like these were some of the most beautiful moments of his life, especially to watch his children grow up. But men don't even think about that. Men are like, well, if she wants to, maybe, or no, I don't really want to. I'm glad that she's on the pill, or that she got the termination.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lose-lose on both sides, but it's being like propagandized as the cool, hip, like woke thing to do.
Right. We had a super chat come in from Big Bala, throws in $5 and says, man, this stuff is so cray. Here in Seattle, I bet there are plenty of hoes doing this stuff. Yeah, I bet there are. I bet all around us and here in America that we don't realize how prevalent it is. And as I said in the insanity stream, it's through social media that this stuff is spreading, and we don't realize what it is. But that's why you're seeing, doesn't matter if you're in the Midwest or the South,
Yeah.
this stuff is everywhere because people have access to it through social media. Anyways, let's get back to some of these TikToks. We got a few super chats, but we'll address those in just a moment, guys. I want to finish this one with the woman that we were watching, talking about how she likes to set up her termination altar,
which you plan to put the products of conception or the fetal remains within to catch that after you've passed it, and save it for later when we find a way to bury, or otherwise to where we find a way to properly dispose of the fetal remains in a way that gives reverence and respect and support to this sacred abortion experience. Building.
So again, the termination experience is perceived as sacred. Here it looks like another woman. Termination is sacred. That soul chooses you to have a termination.
To understand, and to understand life within your womb, you have to understand that life came to you, that soul came to you and knew the choices you were going to make. The souls that come into our bodies, they choose their parents for a balancing of karma, or to get certain lessons, or whatever the hell is going on. They choose their parents. So if you have an abortion, you had an abortion, or you're going to have an abortion, the soul comes to you knowing that you are going to have an abortion. The first and most important thing to grasp is that soul and you are working in tandem to create abortion, to create a death cycle within you. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not going against this soul. You're not doing something against this soul. You're not doing anything wrong. There's no guilt. There's no shame. It's you working in tandem with this soul.
For those watching, this one TikTok has 2,347 likes, 411 bookmarks. If you go to her TikTok, 365,000 followers. Unreal. And she's literally talking about how the soul chooses you. I mean, this is almost beyond your imagination.
It's funny because when I was doing some of my research, I found that like the Maori culture, like the Indigenous New Zealand natives, they have this idea of termination ritual as well. And they have like a whole process they go through before they do that, when they know that the woman is pregnant, to like take the magic away from the soul of the child so that it can't like come back on them karmically or with vengeance because it's mad that it got terminated. So they go through like a series of rituals first to like zap the magic out of the soul of the fetus so that it can't have vengeance upon them for terminating it later. It's wild. Like
Oh
there's
my gosh.
many, like I said, so many of these indigenous religious practices have termination as a ritual, and they've got like whole, this is why there's all these herbal preparations and different ways of doing this. People don't realize that this stuff was only medicalized in the 1950s. Termination was
Wow.
not medicalized prior to the 1950s. And in my book, I talk about the reason, one of the primary reasons witch hunts would start, one of the reasons midwives were always targeted is because they were the providers of this procedure. They were the ones who knew how to do this. And so sometimes what would happen is maybe a king or a noble or an upstanding person in the community would find out that their wife had gone to a midwife for this procedure and want to retaliate against her. Sometimes it was a wife would find out that her husband had a mistress and that the mistress had to go to a midwife to get the termination to hide the affair so that there wouldn't be a child. So there was some politics involved, but the reason that midwives were targeted was because they were traditionally the ones who provided this procedure to people. It's not actually as like hysterical as you might think. I'm not saying it's good that we should like do that necessarily. I'm not saying there wasn't unfair persecution, but I'm saying there's a reason midwives were targeted, and it's because they were the abortion providers throughout all of history until very recently.
And just scrolling through here, so the search was abortion magic, and you can see the rest of these fill, but look at all these videos on telling you which drugs to use, which herbs to use. The board,
There's a lot of African religions, talking about how to do this, like voodoo. I found some voodoo girls on here talking about how to do a ritual termination. So yeah.
Let's check this one out.
Oh, this one's good.
Hey guys, I already got a spell going, and I'm going to show you what I did for this, but it's a little bit different, and I want to talk about something real quick. So if you're triggered by the word abortion, I need you to scroll now. That was your chance. So I personally am a person who chose to go through that act for personal reasons. I am not telling you that it was the right choice, that's something that you should do, but I am telling you that if you ever went through that and you feel like you have no one to talk to about it, I am here for you. I also am here for people like my client, who did not wish to have an abortion, but was forced to have one by their family for whatever reasons they sought and whatever reason they thought was correct. My client did not wish to be a part of it. So this is a very special cord cutting that hits very close to my heart. And I want you to know that none of you are alone. And if any of you need to talk to anyone, let me know. I'm going to be here for all of you as much as I can, okay? Now onto the cord cutting. This red candle has a love and new beginning spell carved into the back. I have all of the beautiful herbs and flowers at the bottom. This black candle is a return to sender karma candle.
Return
I would like to return this baby, please. I did not order this baby. I would like to return it.
Ma'am, did you have your receipt with you? Gosh.
A hold your ass accountable spell at the bottom. I'm not going to go into all of those herbs because I don't want people to work with baneful magic, but I need you to understand that if you have yarrow, it is considered baneful. Please use it wisely. I have the salt and rosemary plus a rosebud to represent the baby at the bottom. These two ties are to represent the mother and the daughter, so when they both sever, they will be separated. And this last one is for the baby that was lost. This will help you have closure. Never forget, but closure. And it will help find peace at the end of this all, and also know what they're being held accountable for. As they burn down into the blue wax, you will find a place of closure and serenity, and they will find a place of isolation. I can't believe that moved on me. Well, I'm going to post a part 2 once the candles get here. It is going to take a while, and I'm going to start the time lapse right around here because a lot of my time lapses are becoming too long to post the whole thing on TikTok.
What the hell? Okay. This is unreal. Absolutely unreal. So I wanted to, what is this? The magic abortion spell. See what this
Abortion spell jar. There's a jar.
This kind of shit is what I'm talking about. Yes, I believe her 1000%. Why? Because there are people on freaking Instagram, I'm not even going on the web, who do
That is
this
the
type
web.
of work. How do I know? They advertise it. Death work. They advertise it. And when
she
I
must
see
be
that,
a white witch.
because I don't even like.
All magic is bad. Again, there's no
Yes.
such thing as white witches. They think they're helping people, but they're not.
Right.
I want to go again. Maybe there's more on this chick.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. Anything on abortion? This is the one that she was sitting in front of that one background, right? So I wonder if
Yeah.
part 3 and 4 is on here somewhere.
It is, but you got to scroll down fairly far. It's from
Okay.
like a year ago or something.
Okay. Let's find
But
this.
you can tell it because it's her only videos that have that like tapestry thing hanging behind her, that brown tapestry in the
Yeah.
background.
Here we
Oh,
go.
there we go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Let's see. If you see it, stop me. I'm not.
Creation and destruction.
Oh my gosh. Here's blood magic. Do you know how strong it was till I practiced it? Yikes. Okay. Maybe I went past it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's further up there somewhere. It's not those because she didn't have that weird makeup on. It's these. I think it's in here where she's got like the pieces of hair falling down a little bit or something, if I remember right. But maybe it's up a little bit more. Unless they took them down, because it's weird that the link that I sent you said the video wasn't available. I wonder if she got a little more heat than she was hoping for on that one.
Yeah, that's what, because I just watched them the other day. It was like last week when you sent them. They were on her profile, so I don't know where they went, because when I searched it, they came up, and now it's like we're only finding people talking about what she.
Well, when you
said.
were back on the termination ritual page on the sidebar with the other searches, I saw one about a jar, and I was like,
Oh,
it was like a Broshan jar or something, and I was like, what's that?
what?
I don't
Let's
know,
go
like
back
a
to
spell jar. I'm like, what are they doing with a spell jar?
Good Lord. Yeah, this page isn't working anymore. Okay. Here's something I wanted to show people that I found searching. This is a skit from Stephen Colbert where he does a mock sacrifice to Moloch, and watch how people are laughing. It's absolutely sick.
No, the Norquist is coming for me! I must appease him with the gift of a man-child! Come to me! I must feed you! I must feed you to the Norquist! Ah! No, take him! No, take the baby! Take the baby! Don't eat me, eat the baby! I'm sure the baby will be fine. No.
Disgusting.
It's so funny. It's like when remember that other comedian with the curly red hair did the like abortion parade several years back?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very, very edgy, very funny.
I think this is what I put in. Tell me if you see the jar thing again.
Yeah, see over on the side where it says abortion spell jar?
Oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any actual videos why that's in there.
Message to Witch Talk.
They want to take away our rights? Oh, she's putting rosemary leaves and garlic. Looks like the beginning of my spaghetti sauce recipe, to be honest.
Yeah. I wanted to mute it just so we didn't get copyrighted for the music.
Yeah. Seal with a white candle wax. Ew.
So she's using herbs, which again, we have an article in regards to Native American traditions actually talking specifically about this. What is this? Women's empowerment, women's health, pro-choice. It's a spell jar. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. Anyways, I think people kind of get the picture now. Oh, what is this chick? Oh, we got to see what she has to say.
Okay. There's a lot of baby fever, pregnancies, yada, yada. And I've had a lot of people contact me about Witchfoot's abortion pamphlet, Deleus Fetus.
Deletus.
$5.
Deletus Fetus. It's $5 on Amazon.
On Amazon, you type in Deleus Fetus Witchfoot. Go through the URL, not the app. That way, whenever you are able to buy it and download it, your Kindle doesn't mess up. Okay? You're able to actually get it. And thoroughly read through it so that nothing negative happens.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So is that instructional then also?
It sounds like it. It's some type of spell, Deletus Fetus, that they go by on Amazon. Wow.
Witchfoot. I'll have to look that up later. Also, I just want to I want to know who's impregnating these creatures.
Seriously.
Who is out there doing this? Stop it.
Seriously.
You can tell just by looking at them that they're not, you know what I mean? You can tell. So
yeah, we got some super chats that came in. We have a $25 super chat. Thank you so much from an anonymous donator that says thoughts on IUDs and the quote active hormone kill unquote switch that entails. Yeah, it minimizes the consequence, but it isn't that just full-time abortion. Are you familiar with active hormone kill? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, Jamie Hanshaw and I did a stream about all of this stuff where we go pretty in depth on a lot of the methods and how they actually are misrepresented as contraception, because you still have the conception occur, you still have the fertilization. So if life begins at conception, as we believe it does,
right,
what happens is you still have the conception, but the IUD and the hormones prevent the concepted baby from implanting and growing. So from an Orthodox or even a Roman Catholic perspective, that's why Roman Catholics have been one of the few things they've done right. Like in the past, after Vatican II, it all went out the window, but they used to be very good at holding the line on birth control, saying, no, it's still termination because you're still having a fertilized egg. There's still something conceived. You're just preventing it from implanting and growing. And that's what the IUD does. It releases, there's copper ones that don't, but the most popular one, Mirena, releases a bit of progesterone to prevent implantation. So yeah, if you believe life begins at conception, not implantation, then it would still be a termination. technically, yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, we're going to come to this idea because there are a particular religious tradition where we're going to look at some verses from the Talmud that actually says that they do not believe life begins at conception, and so we'll get to that here in a few. But I just want to address all the super chats before we go on. Next one was from our sister Amptown One. God bless you. She says, "God bless you both for bringing this to light. I could not keep watching it, but I appreciate your work." Well, thank you, Amptown One, and I know that
Yeah.
that you're not the only one. A lot of people can't stomach this stuff for good reason. Anybody who's rational and sane and has any sort of holiness in them can feel how disgusting and demonic these activities are. Next one comes from Dean Lim, throws in $10 and says, "What is so nefarious is how much authority they speak of these rituals without forethought or remorse." Yeah, agreed, Dean Lim. Thank you so much for the super chat. And then we have two more anonymous super chatters throwing $5. One says, "May this black candle symbolize the eternal isolation of the child," unquote. In Girl, Gay Boy, Blue Hair, Witch Voice, Yarrow is so vainful. Use it wisely, guys. And termination is so trendy and cool, unquote. Yeah. I think I
was
agree with what you... Go ahead.
wondering what she meant by that when she said the black candle was to isolate. Like, it sounded like she was saying isolate, like, forever, eternally, the, like, soul of the fetus. That's what it sounded like to me. That's why when she said that, my face was like,
Yeah.
because why do you need to isolate it if this is like a good and peaceful and like wonderful thing that you did? Why do you need to do that?
Well, and the other
It's
chick, I
just
couldn't believe that she says the soul of the fetus or the baby chose to be in your womb, and therefore they want to be a part of this sacred termination.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, Jim Bob has been arguing on TikTok with this guy named Jerry who believes in karma and this sort of thing about that very and the guy, like, Jim Bob logically walked him through because this guy believed that too. He basically said you should not intervene if something bad is happening to somebody because you don't know if it might just be them getting their karma that they deserve and need to have so that they can, like, progress to whatever the next level is. And Jim Bob walked him through how that's, like, self-negating, it's totally illogical, and, like, so then there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, life has no meaning, and the guy lost his marbles, literally, like, on camera, lost his mind, and then started sending Jim Bob legal threats. So it was wild, it was crazy, but this is, yeah, when you believe in karma, right? It's like, "Oh, well, it's okay if I terminate this baby because it must have chosen me because it needs to be aborted so that it can, like, continue through the cycle of life and death." It's similar to when I debated Tree of Logic, and she told me there's nothing wrong with termination because she doesn't believe souls ever die; they just get recycled. So when you terminate the baby, it just gets plopped into another body. And so I said to her, then I guess there's nothing wrong with somebody unaliving you right now because you won't really die; you'll just get plopped into a new body, right? So why should we even have any laws against murder at all? And she also absolutely lost her mind and started screaming and threatening me. So,
Wow.
like, these people have, like, these contradictory, self-refuting beliefs that they're constantly trying to, like, reconcile, and I think when you point out how illogical and irrational it is, they, like, freak out.
Wow. That's unreal. And yeah, if you believe that karma and anybody who's going through something negative of some sort, they deserve it. This is the same mentality that again developed the caste system and essentially
Yeah.
created the untouchables, which is a slave caste, the lowest caste in India. I know they're trying to get away from, but even in India, the caste is in many ways related to the amount of melanin people have in their skin, and they
Yeah.
believe these people are deserve of being poor. They deserve, again, being held or not having access to resources like the rest of the society does, not having as much say. And it's so funny, these same people who are progressive and want to fight for rights of people
Yes.
are believing in a worldview that's actually more in favor of, like, slavery of mass groups of people. And it
Yeah,
shows
that's
you Go ahead.
That's what happened with Jim Bob and Jerry. Jerry was this boomer like believer in karma, and he was explaining to Jim Bob live on stream that like pygmies or indigenous people or these dark-skinned people who are like uncivilized, they're like that because they haven't gotten to the point where they are light-skinned first world people. Like they have to go through enough karmic cycles of reincarnation. And Jim Bob was just like, okay, so how many lives before I get to play golf and have Nikes and be white? Like how many times? It's just so absurd. In other words, it's just to say that these belief systems are so absurd. And I think for women, they're very appealing because then the woman can believe that, you know, if she doesn't like choices she made, she wants to avoid responsibility for them. So she terminates this child that really she didn't do anything wrong. You know, she's returning it to sender, right? Or she is, what's the other one? What did the other one say? Oh, she's creating a new life for herself.
Yeah.
And, you know, these weird ways of rationalizing that not only am I doing something that's not bad, I'm actually doing something good, right? It's actually a good thing I'm doing because stupid reasons.
Right. Unreal. And then the last super chat over on the Dono chat is from another anonymous donator. Thank you so much for throwing in $5. Says, weird how one of the witchy women, their background song to her spell cast was Plagues from the movie Prince of Egypt when the Lord is smiting the firstborn of the Pharaoh. I didn't even realize that, but
Didn't
now
catch that, no.
I didn't catch
Good
that either,
catch.
but that makes sense then why she chose that song. Wow. Very interesting. Thank you for catching that, whoever the anonymous super chatter was. And Bruce Roberts throws in $10. Thank you so much, Bruce. He says, witches / magicians work with every other, quote, god / demon, but they stay clear of the Christ or claim to know the magic of Jesus, the Golden Dawn. Yeah, it's true. And the animosity towards Christ is prevalent when you dive into these circles, that they hate him or they reinterpret him, one, as a homosexual. I've seen that growing online, or some type of magician, which is, again, there's a whole book that I haven't actually done a stream on that I want to. It's called Jesus the Magician. It's by Morton Smith. This was a controversial book in the 70s. Morton Smith was a scholar, and he was a homosexual man. And he tries to make the case that Jesus was just a magician that was consistent with the time that he was living in. It never held up, and people have criticized him in regards to the scholastic veracity of his research. But that is a popular book, and so people read that book and they're, oh yeah, well, see, we have academic evidence. He's just another magician of the ancient world. No. And then KS throws in $2, says, strong $2.17 altar purchased from Dollar General.
Totally.
Thank you so much, KS. And let's see, we have one over on Streamlabs for $1. Let me pull that up real quick. And that was from Who Sewed the Button. Throws in $1 and says, thanks for your guys' content. Top tier Orthosphere creators. Not that many channels to watch out here. Well, thank you so much, Who Sewed the Button. I do appreciate that. Thanks for the support. So now, in relationship to some of the other articles we have, here's an article that I found in regards to abortion around the world. And unfortunately, again, we can see the colors here. The highest rate right now is in Russia, and out of 1,000 women, 53.7 are terminating their child. And so we see Kazakhstan, and then some of these Eastern European, Latvia, Belarus, Ukraine. And so if you come down here to the top 10 countries with the highest termination rates per 1,000 women, we see Russia number 1, Vietnam number 2, Kazakhstan number 3, Estonia, Belarus, Romania, Ukraine, Latvia, Ukraine, Romania, Belarus, Estonia, and Russia all have Orthodox, an Orthodox-centered religious worship, which is really sad. Then Cuba is number 9 and China's number 10. Now, I thought this was really interesting. The top 10 countries with the lowest termination rates, number 1 is Mexico. Mexico, at least on record, according to 2023, is 0.1 per 1,000 women.
Wow.
That's really interesting. Portugal, then Qatar, Austria, India. I was surprised India was actually in one of the lower numbers. South Africa, Greece, Croatia, Switzerland, and then Belgium. And then
That is
we have
interesting.
the United States here. And if we go to the United States, this article highlights which 10 states have the highest termination rates. And if you go through here, you click next, it should bring, here it goes. So number 10 is Connecticut. Number 9 is Michigan. So
Boo,
we're seeing
L.
number 8 is Nevada. Number 7 is Georgia. Number 6 is California. I thought California would be higher. Number 5 is Florida. Even though you go to number of terminations, because this is based on population. So because their population is so high, it's only 19.2 per 1,000 women. But you look at the amount, quite a bit per year. Florida, I was surprised, is number 5. And there was a article that I read online about Florida that they sort of were documenting the cases of termination. And obviously we hear the advocates always talk about rape. They talk about, potential health developments with women that are detrimental, but their study showed that it was like 97% were elective. So less than 3% were actually related to any sort of rape, incest, or health problems with women. 97% of the state of Florida were elective. Of course,
I think the overall rate nationwide is like 98% are elective.
Wow.
If I
Number
remember
4
right.
is Illinois. Number 3, Maryland. Number 2, New York. And then number 1 is the state of New Jersey that has a 29.2, basically, if you round it, close to 30 women per 1,000 choose termination. So pretty sad.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to highlight this article or this section right here. So Uganda, which again is thriving right now, Orthodoxy spreading in Uganda, but they have a sort of witchcraft tradition that's indigenous there that is tied to sacrifice. And so if you go down here to the motives, I thought this was really interesting. Witch doctors who also identify as traditional healers will consult with mythical spirits for anyone who they can pay their fee. The spirits are believed to communicate through them the kind of sacrifice for appeasement that they require. Often these sacrifices are chickens or goats, but when such sacrifices fail to make the client prosper instantly, the spirits are believed to demand humans. Witch doctors have multiple reasons for child termination, like health, good fortune, and to ward off evil spirits. Often this practice involves a strategic maneuver where the witch doctor assigns the client an unattainable task, thereby avoiding the appearance of failure on their part. In doing so, the witch doctor obtains substantial wealth by orchestrating and executing human offerings, commanding exorbitant fees for their services. This disturbing trend is fueled by the client's insatiable desire for instant riches and the witch doctor's unbridled greed. Consequently, a disturbing market has emerged where children are bought and sold as commodities. Regrettably, the practice of child termination has transcended religious or cultural connotations to evolve into a chilling commercial enterprise, which we're seeing also in the Western world.
Yes.
This was the Carthaginian article that we highlighted earlier. This was one that you found, third wave witches, feminist spirituality and spiritual feminism. And down here, so they're upset about the bills that are being passed to limit abortion. And she says, this campaign is exactly what it sounds like. For 40 days, I'm inviting pagans of all pasts to engage in whatever spell work, ritual, or spiritual work they choose, with a focus on keeping termination and reproductive health care safe and legal for all. So remember, again, when we were reading James George Fraser, he was talking about how the Phoenicians described it as a rite, and it was enshrined legally in their culture. You may work in groups or alone. You may choose to do the same ritual every night or engage in different workings. You may do full-blown ritual or simple candle spell, which we saw on TikTok, or dedicate your meditation practice to the cause of reproductive justice for the next 40 days. There is no wrong way to participate. The goal is to have as much energy flowing. Again, that's why I wanted to highlight what magic is. So they want energy flowing towards this collective goal, toward the goal of safe and legal access to termination and other reproductive health care as possible. There's no need to curse or work against those who are behind the laws in Texas and Arkansas, or directly negatively at protesters, as tempting as that may sometimes be, ! Instead, our goal should be to offer protection for those seeking reproductive health care and protection of the right of access to the care more broadly.
Yeah, and a quick note on the whole safe and legal stuff, right? Because even though now most of the time you don't even hear that argued, most of the time it's not like it was in the Clinton era where we're trying to convince everyone that this is something that people don't want to do, but every once in a while there's like a really extenuating circumstance and a woman just has to, that kind of thing. They kind of have gotten rid of that whole narrative, and now it's like shout your abortion, and it's, let me show you how to make it into a ritual spell on TikTok. But for people who are concerned about this old propaganda narrative of the safety, let me just read you like a short excerpt from my book where I talk about this lie, because it's a lie. So prior to the medicalization of abortion, they put forth this huge propaganda. This was, early Planned Parenthood in the 40s and 50s. They said tens of thousands of women died every year as a result of dangerous illegal terminations. And later, Dr. Bernard Nathanson, co-founder of the National Abortion Rights Action League and director of the largest abortion clinic in the world during the 1970s, later admitted that leading abortion proponents knew this figure was false, but felt it was useful as a PR tactic. And I have the source cited in the book if you want to know where I got that information and you want to verify it, make sure I'm not making it up. On top of that, even statisticians from Planned Parenthood have admitted that abortion death statistics were very accurately kept in the years leading up to legalization. For example, there were only 39 deaths from illegal abortion in 1972, and I'm still seeing, even now, people saying there were tens of thousands of women who would die every year prior to the legalization, and that if we make it illegal, this is going to happen again, that tens of thousands of women a year, or hundreds, it depends who you ask, but they'll give you these huge numbers to try to scare you into thinking that desperate women are going to just die in huge numbers. We kept very good records. Now, sometimes they would put things on a death certificate like that were somewhat ambiguous sounding, or like maybe proper terminology, but they knew what those were, and so we can go back and we can see how often that actually happened. And there was a big study that was done, I think in Scandinavia. Researchers in Finland examined women's medical records and death certificates there and found that 94% of maternal deaths related to abortion were as such from the birth certificates alone. So there's also been this huge effort to cover up deaths from termination and call them something else on the death certificate. So basically, most of the statistics that they've used for decades and decades to try to convince people that termination is safe and that pregnancy is dangerous and life-threatening, all of this stuff is propaganda. It's lies. You can easily verify it. Again, in my book, I have all these sources cited because I know these are big claims to make. I'm not going to throw them out there unless I can back them up with good sources and citations. So just in case you're still falling for this, well, but we have to have it be legal so that it'll be safe. That's not the case.
Right. That's really insightful. And that is part of the narrative, right? I even hear that today. They always talk about how dangerous pregnancy is and giving birth, or there's a movement for C-sections. I've heard women talking about how the hospitals, I don't know if it's because they make more money or not, but they almost incentivize women to get C-sections instead of traditional birth.
Yeah, the reason they do that is a couple of reasons. The biggest one is that our current medical system, our mainstream medical system, is not based around health or prevention. It's based around pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical reps actually create the curriculum for doctors and teach them how to prescribe drugs, as well as the fact that everything is covered by insurance. So legality and covering your ass legally is the number one concern of hospitals. The biggest threat to any
Ah,
hospital being profitable is being sued. So anything that mitigates their risk to be sued, whether it's contraindicated or not, that's what they'll do. So there is a big home birth movement. I would say if you can do it, do it. If I could go back and do mine all that way, I would. I just didn't know all that stuff a million billion years ago when I was having babies. But yeah, they do over medicalize pregnancy and birth, in my opinion. Like even prior to me knowing all this information, they always wanted me to lay on my back when I was in labor. And I would be like, no, I need to get up. And like my body just told me I need to get up and like walk. I need to be like in an upright position. I don't want to be laying on my back and things like that. So I do think we over medicalize birth and pregnancy. And young women that I talk to in debates and arguments online and discourse that I have with them, they're very convinced that they like if you hear them talk, they think there's like a 50-50 chance you're going to die with each pregnancy. Like they vastly overestimate the danger of having babies. And it's like, guys, think about it for 2 seconds. Yes, there was a lot of death in childbirth prior to like antibiotics and people knowing how to reduce infection. That's true. But once we got that figured out, the maternal mortality rate like plummeted into the ground. And now in the United States, it's actually going back up. Do you know why? Does anybody have a guess as to why maternal mortality is actually starting to climb in the United States?
mm-mm.
It's because the average age that women give birth is so much older than it's ever
Oh,
been. So I
that
think
makes
the
sense.
average age now that women are having their first baby is like 30 or 31. And we have all these
Wow.
women having, post 40 years old pregnancies all the time from, in vitro and things like that, fertility treatments. So that's actually the dangerous thing. The dangerous thing is waiting until you're 35 or 40 to decide you're going to start your family. So if you're really concerned about the risks of childbirth, follow based homeschool mom and have your kids when you're young, like nature intended, and then do all your other stuff after. That's what I say.
Yeah, great point. And I want you to comment on this. Thomas Henderson, shout out to Thomas. I know him. He's a friend of the program, and he said C-sections limit the number of births a woman can have. Is that true?
Um, it's not entirely true. So they used to always tell women that if you've had one C-section, you always have to have them, that you can't have a vaginal birth after a C-section. That's not true anymore. Now, more and more women are having vaginal births after
Mm.
C-sections. And they're not like inherently limiting the number, but the more C-sections you have to have, I guess the more risky it can be to have them. So it does make it hard. Like it'd be harder to have, say, 5 C-sections. I never had to have one of those. I was
Yeah.
lucky. I was like a birthing champ, and so they just but
Well, that's what I heard
so
a
for me
woman tell
it
me
wasn't
that
hard, but
she had 3 children and they were all C-sections, and the doctors told her to not have any more children because I don't know if it was like the scar tissue or
yes.
something in
Yeah.
regards to opening up. So maybe that's what Thomas is referring to
Yeah.
is you can still get pregnant, obviously, but
Right.
a woman I talked to, she said, yeah, I forget she had her husband he got
Yeah.
snipped or something because she
Yeah.
said, yeah, the doctors told us that I shouldn't have any more children. I had 3 and they were all C-sections.
Yeah, I think the more scar tissue you have from them having to always make an incision in the uterus, if the placenta were to try to attach there and things like that, it can be more risky and they just can't keep going over the same spot, I think. So they will likely recommend that. But honestly, guys, doctors recommend that you don't have kids all the time for any reason. Like, oh, you had cramps. Oh, don't have any more kids. I mean, there's a very prevailing antinatalist attitude in our society where babies are seen as icky and gross. They're seen as expensive, as a liability, as a ball and chain that holds you back, as a risk to your health. If you have more than 2 or 3, you're a weirdo or, as I've been called, a baby factory. So like doctors are very inclined to, again, this is risk mitigation for them, because if you were to keep having babies and anything did go wrong, this way they can go, well, I warned her that there were risks if she keeps having babies and things like that. Now, I'm not saying there aren't risks to having multiple C-sections. I'm sure there probably are. But just in general, they love to warn women about the dangers of childbirth and how risky it is. And part of this comes from Margaret Sanger, by the way. She perpetuated another lie, which was that her mother died from overbirthing. Margaret Sanger lied constantly. The woman's mouth was opening, she lied. She said, my mother died because she had like I think 11 children. Her body just kills your body. It just destroys your body. You just die because you just birth too much. Like each baby is a parasite that sucks the life out of you, and then you just die, right? Well, that was a lie. Her mother did not die from that. Her mother died from tuberculosis, like almost everybody else did in 1918 or whatever it was. So no, having a bunch of babies doesn't just ruin you and kill you. It's you have to be careful with some of that, because people just, the antinatalist propaganda has been so strong for so long.
Wow. Yeah, crypto guy said he knows a woman that had 5 C-sections, even though the doctor told her to stop at 3. That's what the woman told me,
Yeah.
that she was worried because the doctor told her she was going to have all these health complications.
Yeah.
But he said there was none even after the 5th. So interesting anecdotal evidence there, whatever that means. But we had a super chat. $5 came in from Tinfoil Hat Girl. She says, it's so sad to me that these girls don't realize the gravity of what they are doing. I had my daughter at 17, and I could not imagine my life without her. She is the only joy in my life. God knows what he is doing. Absolutely. God absolutely does know. And, you know, even if you have an early pregnancy or an unexpected pregnancy at a young age, you know, your life's not better by terminating it.
No. I was told that my life was over so many times, you guys. The first baby at 20, my life was over. And then the second baby, it was totally over. And then by the third baby, it was definitely over. And then when I said I was, even my grandma, you guys, even my grandma, who you all know I love, when I told her I was having the 5th one, she was like, oh, Rachel. You know, she was just like, what are you, everybody around us was just like, what are you doing? And now she feels terrible. My grandma always says it's one of the things she regrets most in life is how she reacted to that. Because of course, now that number 5 is here and she's 11 years old and everybody loves her, everybody feels bad for wishing that she hadn't existed. But no, your life isn't over from babies, for Pete's sake. Goodness sakes alive. Imagine thinking that creating more people is going to like somehow end your life and ruin everything, and just your life is over now. It's so silly. Just don't listen to that nonsense.
Over on Dono Chat, we had $30 super chat. Thank you so much from Inacio Romano. Inacio Romano says, this show has been a heartbreaking eye-opener on an already terrible subject. I pray for the young women that are being sold these disgusting practices. Thank you, DPH and Rachel, for your work. God bless you both. Well, thank you so much, Inacio Romano, for the generous super chat. And I agree. This is it's stomach churning to dive into, again, the whole TikTok witch talk abortion magic world.
Yeah.
It's sad. Moving on, though, in regards to some of the sources, maybe you'd be better to talk about this lady here, Annie Finch. And she has a poem here, a termination day spell for 2 voices. And I want to read this, and then you describe her and looking into her stuff. This is the poem that she says, a termination day spell. So this is a poetic spell. I turn your blood back to the earth. I am life. You are death. And we kiss. Through the fire that is my freedom's birth, by the womb of our love's endlessness, as you turn my blood back to the earth, I am death, and you are life, and we kiss, till we move through the deep, giving forth to the web of our love-woven bliss, through the fire that is our freedom's birth. Who is this lady?
Blah, 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 blah. Sorry. Dangerfield Henley gonna see this and he's gonna curse me out because I don't like poetry, guys. I'm sorry. Like there's something in me that just poetry's not my thing. It sounds like fluffy stuff. But Annie Finch is a witch. She's a feminist. And she's not some TikTok girl, okay? She's a pretty serious person. So I'll read you a little bit from her bio here on her website. Annie Finch is an American poet, writer, translator, speaker, teacher, and performer. She's the author of 6 poetry books, most recently Spells, New and Selected Poems. Her other works include influential essays, books, and anthologies on poetics, feminism, and women's earth-based spirituality. Again, feminism is always tied in with this Mother Earth spiritualism. She's widely recognized for her mesmerizing poetry performances and mastery of poetic craft. She's appeared in the New York Times, Poetry Magazine, Paris Review, and Penguin Book of the 20th Century American Poetry. Her work's been translated into Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, French, Malayalam, Portuguese, Polish, Russian, and Spanish. She was educated at Yale and Stanford universities, where she earned her PhD. She has lectured at universities including Berkeley, Harvard, and Oxford, and has performed her poetry across the United States and in India, Mexico, Africa, and throughout Europe. Now, this woman is in like every exclusive club of academics. So, like, the academic world takes her very seriously. And she has a spell book she has one called the Poetry Witch Little Book of Spells. She has a specific one about abortion, which is supposed to be like the first poetry book that's a total anthology on abortion. She has another one called Among the Goddesses. So she basically, even if I think it's silly, people in academic circles in Ivy League colleges take her very seriously. She's like a fellow at a lot of these universities. Let's see, it says that she's addressing audiences at hundreds of events. Finch has offered talks and poetry performances at venues including A Room of Her Own, Columbia University, Emerging Women, Harvard University, Modern Matriarchal Studies in Notre Dame, Stanford, Oxford, UC California, Berkeley, Yale. So all the big colleges have her all the time to do this cringe feminist abortion poetry. She's held fellowships at the Stanford Humanities Center, the Wesleyan Writers Conference, the Architecture and Spirituality Forum, and Cherry Hill Seminary, where she was the inaugural artist in residence. She's an emeritus fellow of Black Earth Institute. We might want to Google that.
Yeah, what is that?
Black Earth Institute. I don't know. She is a rank of tenured full professor at the English faculty of Miami University. I mean, her list of credentials is so long. So this woman is a serious academic in this world. And, you know, this is where we are with these things. These women are like totally validated by academia, and they're very much part of these elite institutions.
So the Black Earth Institute seeks to help create a more just and deeply interconnected world and promote the planet's health. To do so, artists are appointed as fellows for a term and scholars join as advisors. Black Earth Institute then encourages and supports its present and past fellows and scholars to address social justice, environmental issues, and the spiritual dimensions of the human condition in their art and work. Their mission: the Black Earth Institute is a community of fellow artists and scholar advisors creating a more ethical world.
Yeah.
It's dedicated to promoting diversity and inclusiveness in its selection of scholars and fellows, and its selection of work for publication and about place, and its board membership, and in all of its present and future activities.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so this is what I find just over and over and over and over again. Anytime I'm doing any of my work, these feminist women are always into earth worship, goddess worship stuff. And if you go back to the precursor to the Fabian Society, if you guys watch Jay, which a lot of you probably do, he talks about the Fabians all the time. And I had to do a ton of research on them as well, because feminism was one of their like core tenets. And the precursor to the Fabian Society was this very small group of influential intellectuals. Sanger's boyfriend, Havelock Ellis, was in this group, and they were vegans. And the reason they were vegans was because they had this concept that maleness and men were basically the exploitators and grapists of Mama Earth, right? This we go back again to this earth worship, goddess worship, Mother Earth stuff, and that this inherent idea that women are birth givers, we're peaceful, we're spiritual, we're inherently good and peaceful, and we want everything to be equitable. And then men come along, and maleness is defined by the willingness to exploit and eat other living animals, meat eaters, and they're grapists, and they grape Mother Earth. And so to have babies is like humanity is this curse upon the planet. And when you think about that, right, Patrick, it's very Gnostic. It's this idea that we
Yes.
have to return to this pre-fall Edenic state where we were vegan and there was no gender, and like everybody was one with the earth. And that in the post-fall state, all the things that make the post-fall world bad are things like differences in sex and gender, differences in race and ethnicity, eating meat, anything that exploits Mother Earth and nature. So the nature worship, goddess worship stuff always comes with all of this. It has to be part of it. It is the religion of feminism.
Right. And it's a perfect presuppositional basis to ingratiate a pagan worldview, pagan values, because everything is in the narrative of protecting Mother Earth, Gaia,
Yes.
again, climate change. So you look at what the WEF is advocating for, or many of the elite institutions, and it's always the reason why we have to do it is because of Earth. We have to protect Earth. We need less people because of Earth. And so
Yeah.
it's the same narrative over and over and over.
Yeah, so if you guys are wondering, why is this Annie Finch lady, this crazy, like, feminist performative poetry lady, why does she have these incredible credentials that are like 100 miles long? That's why. Because these elite institutions love anything that's going to push all of these agendas. The population control stuff, the eat the bugs, live in the pod, erase all the boundaries, get rid of gender, get rid of ethnicity, get rid of nation, get rid of, so that we can have this one world blob person thing where we're all just sexless, genderless, brown blob, unity or whatever that's going to bring world peace, that kind of stuff. They love that stuff. And I mean, feminist standpoint theory was used to push this into the hard sciences and all of that as well. So like the fact that when you're looking at witch talk going, how the hell did we get here? It's in a way going all the way back to the beginning, to ancient times. And it's also in a way just the natural progression of like this revolutionary attitude of overthrow nature, overthrow the social order, rebel against Christianity, wipe Christianity out and get rid of it and go back to the old pagan identities. So that's how we end up here. And I think us knowing that there are demonic spirits behind this, that's why we're the same demonic spirits that were in ancient Carthage and ancient Rome and ancient indigenous cultures are the same ones now telling the TikTok witches to build a termination altar and use their termination as a ritual to get what they want and to exchange bits of their soul for whatever, for their new passion project or whatever. It's the same entities behind this stuff.
Right. It's unreal. So here's an article. We're not going to read it, but I just wanted to highlight it. Just me doing research for today's stream. And this is an academic article on termination and ritual in classical Athens. And we see the same thing, that it was used to satiate gods and to achieve personal desires in certain ways. Now, this one you brought to my attention is this article is about how termination is sacred, native perspectives on the overturning of Roe versus Wade. So this is actually on my birthday last year. And so it's talking about how termination is sacred. And so you scroll down here to right here. In some indigenous communities, for instance, the right to termination is not only protected, but sacred. Monique Mercurio, who is a Holon or Dine, lives in Haskell, Kansas, where she is the community coordinator for the local Indigenous Community Center. The day Roe was overturned, the center released a statement condemning the decision as an act of white supremacy. Later that week, the ICC hosted a panel on reproductive justice and colonialism. We have a very big intertribal community here, and the one thing that has come up time and time again, no matter what region or tribe is from, is that termination is sacred.
Yeah. So this is another thing that is not new. So if you go back to the late 1800s, a good friend of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, she doesn't get as much credit as she should. Her name was Matilda Joslyn Gage. She helped write the Woman's Bible. She also wrote a seminal piece of feminist literature called Woman, Church, and State, which absolutely condemned Christianity, said that the church existed only to subjugate women and oppress them. And she used the argument, like even going back to the Seneca Falls Convention, which is like, the 1840s, I believe. This is a long time ago. She was actually like adopted into a Iroquois Nations tribe of some kind in upstate New York where she lived. She supposedly spent a lot of time with those people. And she argued in her book, Woman, Church, and State, that she modeled her feminist view off of indigenous cultures like the Iroquois Nations, where she said that the women were empowered. How are they empowered, you might ask? Well, she said it was the women in the culture who got to decide if and when a baby was born, and that they had every right within their hands to terminate pregnancies. So again, you'll see this all the time. Feminists don't care really about the right to vote or the right to work or the right to go to school. They really don't care about that. And they had almost all those things before they ever got suffrage anyway. What it always comes down to is the right to have sex out of wedlock and the right to terminate pregnancies. Those are the only true measurements that feminists use that they actually care about. They'll give lip service to all kinds of other stuff they don't really care about. This is what they really care about. So even in the middle 1800s, feminists were saying, "Ooh, look at the pagan indigenous religious traditions. The women can have ritual terminations anytime they want. Look how empowered they are. The men don't get to decide that. Isn't this better when the women? It's always in the woman's hands. She has the power to bring life into the world or to decide that life coming into the world should be killed. And this is the true measuring stick of whether or not women are free and empowered." So, and you'll see that here. So we have, and this was not the only tribe I found who's doing this. This is indigenous tribes all over the world are now championing termination rights based on this sacred religious ritual thing. So they're actually like the Satanic Temple and this particular group are working together to try to get things legalized.
I'm not surprised. I want to read these two paragraphs. For Rachel Lorenzo, co-founder of Indigenous Women Rising, termination care is part of the reason we exist. I am here because of termination. Someone down the line of my ancestors knew when it was and wasn't time for expanding their family. They wrote for their Planned Parenthood's blog, "My own children are here because of termination." Part of what makes termination sacred is how it's intertwined with the intergenerational care practices, land and inherited knowledge of plant remedies. Beck, for instance, recalls summers spent outside picking medicinal and fruit plants with her grandmother, aunts, mothers, and cousins. Every plant had a purpose, and we would be carefully cleaned and processed for teas and tinctures. Many members of my family, quote, continue to use plant medicine on a daily basis for pain relief and anti-inflammation or arthritis. Beck explained, and plants too have played a role in Blackfeet reproductive care from menstruation to pregnancy to termination. Globally, termination has been a normal part of many indigenous healthcare traditions. It is not new or modern medical process, she said. And so, so wanted to highlight that for people.
What did it say down there in that next paragraph? It said something about the UN.
Yeah, both federal policies and the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples guarantee the right of Native tribes to practice their religious and cultural traditions. quote, that includes Indigenous people's right to use plant-based medicines for reproductive health. Rosalind Lapierre, an Indigenous ethnobotanist and environmental historian, explained the overturning of Roe then encompasses not just a violation of bodily autonomy, but of cultural practices and land sovereignty.
So this
again,
is, again, using the classical liberal rights argument to justify all sorts of evil practices. As my husband always says, you rarely hear people saying they want more rights, they want to expand rights so that they can have more responsibility or more duties in society. It's always so that they can do something degenerate or something evil. That's always what it's about. So, like this whole, I know this is the liberal Western default that we all live with, but this idea that religious freedom is good, maybe not always. That's all I'm going to say about that. Maybe not always, because look at this. Look at what they're using it for.
Well,
and
and
how
again,
do you argue? How do you argue against it? My libertarian friends don't argue against it for that reason.
Right. And that's why I wanted to highlight that section in this book, because he specifically says for the Phoenicians of Carthage, where these practices were enshrined as a right and it was in their legal processes. And we see that same rhetoric and language today. Next one that I wanted to show was how terminations rose in 2020. And now in the US, 1 in 5 pregnancies are terminated. 1 in 5. That's 20%. And that's it's hard to fathom. And so the counted again, so the report from Guttmacher Institute, a research group that supports termination rights, counted more than 930,000 terminations in the US in 2020 alone. That's up from 862,000 terminations in 2017, when national termination figures reached their lowest point since 1973. U.S. Supreme Court ruling that legalized the reproductive nationwide. And I want to highlight where was it? Right here. So I have a graph on numbers of legal terminations reported in the U.S. since 1973, when these laws went into practice. And we can see how 1973, these are per 1,000. So that's 616,000. These are in the millions up through here. And we see that between 1997 and 1980. The reason why there's so much more during that period is because women were getting pregnant way more. And so as women have been on birth control, we can see the amount of overall terminations have gone down. But that is because less women are actually getting pregnant. And so despite this figure says 620,000 for 2020. Again, the article we just looked at says 930,000. But according to the research, they would say that despite it being a lower number than, say, the 90s and the 80s, it's a higher percentage per pregnancy. So the ratios are actually higher. That's why I was highlighting the 1 in 5 now. That's actually a higher ratio than it was before.
Yeah, so I have some stuff here from my book also, where the National Right to Life Committee estimates that over 62 million terminations have taken place in the United States since Roe v. Wade in 1973. Now, I believe that's from like 2019. That's like a little bit older number now. And the World Health Organization says, this is going to blow your mind. World Health Organization estimated 73 million terminations take place worldwide each year. It also says that 61% of all unwanted pregnancies and a whopping 29% of all pregnancies now end in abortion worldwide.
That's over 1 in 4.
Yeah,
worldwide.
It's almost a third.
That's unreal.
And 61% of unwanted. So more than half of unwanted pregnancies will end in a termination worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. And just so you know, Sanger gave a quote, Margaret Sanger, the wonderful woman who gave us Planned Parenthood. She gave a quote during a John Parsons interview in 1947 where she said, "But for my view, I believe that there should be no more babies."
Jeez.
She really thought humanity just should die.
Wow. Disgusting.
Yeah.
We had a few super chats that came in. Shout out to Wicked Wally with his dad jokes. I kind of like this one. He says, I tossed a book of poems off a roof once. It was real poetry in motion. Thank you, Wicked Wally, for your comedic relief. We do appreciate it. Ortho Eric throws in $5, says St. Paul was right. The gods of the nations are demons. That is
Yep.
a fact.
Yes.
Digital Mind throws in $5, says, what do y'all think it is about the termination death cult that ensnares so many people and makes them fanatical and rabid in their defense of it? Well, again, I'm curious to hear your opinion, Rachel. The first thing I would say is that it's enshrined to this understanding of like female rights, that they're expanding their autonomy. They're getting out of the oppressive clutches of the patriarchy. But then once a woman has it, and this is same with many things we can look at in our culture, once somebody engages in a practice, it's going to be really hard for them to repent from it or see it as wrong. And so once they do it, where you said the rabid defense of it, well, to me, that makes sense. We saw that with the jibby jab. We see that with various things going on in the culture. So once somebody commits to something, they don't want to be wrong. And so they're going to clamp down and hold the line on whatever position they feel like they have because of the actions that they participated in.
Yeah. If you think about the demonic and what kind of interest it has in whispering this into people's ears, especially the ears of women, right? Because the man can't go and do this thing for the woman. Ultimately, it is the woman who does it, okay? So I know that people like to go, but what about the men, though? What about all the guys that? And it's like, yeah, the guys are responsible, right? Okay, they are, but ultimately, it's the woman who is tricked into doing this. And you think about why would that be? Well, we already talked about how you might want to destroy image bearers of God. You know, the demons hate humanity and they want us all to terminate. They want you to self-terminate. They want you to terminate your children. They want to destroy image bearers of Christ. But even more than that, the Bible says that the woman will be saved through childbirth. If you think about the Theotokos being the Ark of the New Covenant and being the Mother of God and bringing Christ incarnate into the world via birth, you can see why the demonic hate women. They hate submissive women. They hate women. Yeah, they hate women who do want to go through everything that birth and motherhood entails, because it's probably one of the greatest salvific acts that you can do. So they want to destroy that. That's why they hate the Theotokos so much. They hate her so much because she is the vessel through which our salvation, came into the world. So they want to convince.
When Adam and Eve were casted out of the garden, men, then the detriments of the fall meant that men have to deal with work. They have to work for the rest of their lives, and women have to bear the pangs of birthing. And so you look at the modern world, men don't want to work. That's part of why they have these meaningless, simpy lives. And then women are avoiding giving birth. And so in a way, it's like we see the culture incentivizing people to avoid the struggle that we have to deal with for our own salvation due to the fall.
Yes, exactly. And for women, the reason I harp on feminism so much, and people are like, ugh, would you stop talking about feminism? It's like, well, the reason I have to is because it is so inherently demonic, because what it does is it prevents women from being able to have the two things you need to be saved. It absolutely stomps humility out of your soul. Feminism is there as a polar opposite of humility in women.
True. That's a good point.
Feminists see humility as weakness, enslavement, brainwashing, Stockholm syndrome. Something wrong with you. I'm told this every day. Okay. On Twitter, I'm told every day that I am a pathetic, self-hating, weak person because I have some humility and submit to my husband and to my church and things like this. And then repentance. This is why the great going to great lengths to defend it, because if you're robbed of any chance of humility, you also can't repent. You can't admit you were wrong. And repentance is painful. We're supposed to cry tears of repentance. It's a painful process to realize that you made mistakes, you're wrong, that you're capable of evil, that you're capable of something like smiting your own child is incredibly painful to face. It's really hard for women to face. So of course they're going to go to every length possible to justify it. And luckily we have all these, what I don't want to get you in trouble on YouTube, but these religions that we would say are demonically influenced, these spiritual traditions that are probably demonically influenced, are there to give women a whole belief system that justifies and even venerates doing these things.
Right. So true. Frankie D, good friend of the program, throws in $5 and says, "My man's, haha, what up, Rachel? God bless you and Andrew. God bless you too, DPH. Sorry I missed the stream. It's always fun when Rachel jumps on. These witched is crazy out here. Show them the based way, Rachel. God bless you guys." Well, thank you so much, Frankie D, for the support, brother. God bless you. And then last super chat that came in was your favorite sociologist. Shout out to your favorite sociologist for supporting the program. Really appreciate it, brother. He throws in $5 and says the leftist movement in South America is largely influenced by indigenous pagan worship of Pachamama, the earth goddess. The left and Satanism are like P, B, and J.
Yep.
So true. So true. And that's why I think, again, the Vatican, why the veneration of Pachamama and putting it on the altar in St. Peter's Basilica is so important, because it's she's tied to human sacrifice, but it shows what the ultimate priority is of their ecumenical movement right now, the changing of the norms of the Catholic Church. It's all moving to this grander universal religion that is going to place Mama Earth above all things.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Okay, continuing on here, then you had this article that we were looking at, abortion doulas. So these are sort of like a midwife, right? A
Yeah,
doula.
it's exactly what they are.
Look to spiritual rituals as they brace for increased demand. Termination doulas who draw on spirituality challenge the termination debates, religious secular divide. And so this article.
These are the
Go ahead.
witches I was talking about. These are the exact people I was talking about that everybody wants to know. How come there were all these witch hunts periodically in different places? Because there were people like this, and Christians, in my opinion, not unreasonably, would look at this practice and go, wait, you do what now? You're a what? You're a termination doula, and you do spiritual practice of terminating human life inside the womb? No. It's going to be a a pillar with a pyre for you. That's what you're getting. You know what I mean? So
Right.
and now they're back. Here they are again. So
Right. And there's some interesting stuff in this one. So it's talking about Carly Maines. That's who this lady is down here. In one case, Maines, who is Jewish, had a client purified in the waters of a mikveh, or a ritual bath commonly undergone by women after menstruation or childbirth. A lot of folks in the birth space, especially within Judaism, are calling in more spiritual practices, said Maines, adding that indigenous communities have a long tradition of rituals for termination and miscarriage.
we
Down
keep
here it says,
hearing that. We keep hearing that, don't we?
yeah, we do. I'm picking up on some patterns here. Abortion doulas, like other types of doulas, the word comes from the ancient Greek for helper, and are increasingly exploring ways to integrate spirituality and ritual into their practices, offering yoga, meditation, prayer, traditional medicine, and even tarot readings.
Of course.
Lindsay Burke, a termination doula from Montana, says in her home state is poised to end legal access to termination services. If that does happen, quote, it will make me question if we'll continue to do business in my home state and if that's a safe place for me where my rights will be protected. Burke has been a termination doula for 15 years and believes that termination is a sacred process. I have a strong connection to Creator, or to God, or to the conscious life force that connects us all, explained Burke, who was raised Catholic. Quote, and I find most religions very beautiful and find really resonant truth in all of them. Excellent.
Over and over. It's the same stuff.
And then to what we see in TikTok. I recommend having an altar or a place of prayer for the whole duration of the procedure, Burke said. I invited the client to maybe write a letter to the baby to explain the reasons for this, to say any last words, write a letter of goodbye that can be placed on the altar, and any other items for spiritual importance. And then different times of deep contemplation can be spent there at the altar at different junctures of the process. Wonderful.
I just keep noticing too how these people again are not saying this is a clump of cells. They are fully acknowledging that this is a person, a
Yeah.
human, a
Write a letter to
baby.
it.
Write a letter to it, tell it your reasons why you got to terminate it, light a candle for it. None of these people have this medicalized, like Darwinist clump of cells perspective. All of them are telling you we are unaliving human beings as a ritual religious practice. I
Right.
mean, how can Christians, even the evangelical, like megachurch Christians, how can you read, if any of them watch this stream and see over and over and over and over from the women themselves, the women who believe this, the women who do this, the women who practice this, telling you exactly what they're doing, and not think that this is like purely demonic Luciferian human sacrifice. I don't know how you could come to any other conclusion.
Right. It's beyond words. It's unreal. Beyond Seraphim throws in $20. Thank you so much, Beyond Seraphim. He says, interesting talk tonight. Thank you, Rachel and David. Yeah, interesting to say the least, but thank you so much for the support. And our brother Frankie D said, this is sick, man. 70 million a year. God have mercy on the souls of those who promote this kind of practice. Much blood is on their hands. And I want to highlight, again, tying it back to the beginning of the stream, that imagine the energy flow. If at a planetary level, we're terminating over 70 million lives around the world. What do you think that is contributing to? And so one of the things, if you read scripture about Israel and whenever they began to practice these abominations, bad things always happen to their nation. And I think when we look at the state of America or even the Western world, in a way, we're all responsible. I mean, not in a direct way. It's not like I did it or you did it, but as a collective community, as a society, the fact that we've normalized these values is sickening.
Yeah, and I've got to say, remember the recent stream you did where you were kind of answering back to some of your critics? You have critics, Jay has critics, my husband has critics who say to you guys, it's not Christian for you to be rude or uncharitable or challenge these people. You just have to come to them in love and hope that they listen and just want to come to a liturgy or something. I'm sorry, but God has historically dispensed justice on nations who civilly sit there and politely allow this sort of thing and don't stand up and don't use strong language and don't dare upset the apple cart, who just go, well, everybody has the right to do what they want, and I'm not going to impede anyone else's rights because this is their right, as they keep saying over and over again. I really think there is a time and a place. All of us have our time and our place and our purpose, and maybe that's not for everybody, but we need men like you and Jay and Andrew and Zen Shapiro. We need you guys out there making these good arguments, challenging people on this stuff and saying, wait a minute, how did we get to the point where we're allowing mass human unaliving in a ritual manner? Please explain how this fits into your secular humanist libertarian view, and I'm supposed to tolerate it. And
Right.
it does bother me a little bit when we have Christians that will finger wag and say, you guys are the mean ones. It's like, I'm sorry, but do you not see this? Do you not see what's happening? Like you said, on a mass scale worldwide, this kind of energy, and maybe some of the people getting these procedures done see them only as a medical procedure, but enough of them clearly see it as a ritualistic offering that this is a serious problem from a Christian perspective. And I don't think this kind of thing is the time and place for like gentle softness and like, I think that there's a time and a place to make a strong stance and thoroughly denounce this sort of thing and to challenge the reasoning behind it and to challenge society's acceptance. This is our nation too. And if it is a nation of rights and we have a voice and we have a vote, well, why is it that only secularists get to demand certain things or have any sort of power in legislation? So if you've watched this stream and you realize what's going on, I think that it makes a lot of sense right now, given the situation, for Christians to have more of a backbone and to use their voice and to make compelling arguments against this sort of stuff, and to challenge this, and not just to sit by and not say anything.
Right. I totally agree. Dagent Muljayer throws in $7.99 and says it's an inverted prayer corner. It really is. But the
It's a
sad part
satanic
is
altar. It's like a
yeah,
satanic
that's what I was going to
altar.
get ready to get. You took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No, we're great minds think alike, right? It really is. It's a satanic altar. It is an inverted prayer corner, but it's a satanic altar with literally advocating putting dead fetuses on it. I mean, okay, continuing on. Here are a website that you sent me, 12 ways to ritualize and honor your termination. And what are the 12 ways? Plant something. You may choose to collect and plant the tissues of conception underneath the plant you have selected for your ritual, or you may simply plant something in honor of this experience. Meditate in prayer. Meditation or prayer can happen before, during, and or after your medical termination. You can use images, music, or words that you find soothing as an anchor. Journal. Again, this ritual can be used before, during, or after your termination. You can describe your experience throughout, taking note of the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that arise in each phase. You may want to write the past you or future you and acknowledge how and why this termination is important to you. Build an altar. Create a space to help ground you and bring beautiful or supportive items into your space. An altar can be as simple as an elaborate as you wish. Items we have seen on altars include candles and flowers and love notes, rocks, crystals, and other natural items, photographs, poetry, and artwork. Or you can just draw tarot or affirmation cards before, during, or after your termination. Draw cards that offer you space for reflection. Sensory bath or shower. You may like to use water for cleansing and or soothing at some stages of your termination. Add in sensory components like essential oils and candles, music, or anything else you find soothing and grounding. Bury the products of your conception. Whether you want to plan something or not, you may wish to bury the tissue you have passed. Before the abortion, make a plan about where and how and whether you'd like to document this in any way. Sing or hum. You may feel good to use your voice to express emotions and physical sensations as you move through your medical termination. Vocalizing can help you relax your pelvic floor, and it can be soothing for the nervous system. Create art. If you are called to create a visual that represents the experience you are having, choose whatever colors and medium you are down to draw and allow yourself to move on the paper/canvas however you want to. Move your body. Dance or stretch. Move in ways that feel supportive. There may be music or not. During and or after your termination, you will likely need to tend to physical discomfort and resting, so this ritual may be the most accessible before your termination. Record a vlog or voice notes. If you prefer to use your voice, you may record your thoughts, feelings, experience in an audio or video journal. And number 12, have TAP document your abortion. The choice to be witnessed and photographed can be a ritual. If you're in if you are in DMV, Maryland, and interested in having your medical termination photographed or serve as a termination doula in the area, please reach out.
Yeah, awesome. That's all good stuff. I'm just it's tempting to make fun of them and be like, what are they going to do? Sing a Taylor Swift song while they make like a vlog of this? Like what? But it's so like it's very cringe and stupid, but it's also like shocking self-worship to be
Yes.
like, not only am I going to do this, terminate my own baby, but I'm going to like ritualize it. I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to plant something. I'm going to sing a song. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to record everything because it's all about me and like me processing my feelings and my experience. And it's just like, and I just can't imagine a life with this level of self-absorption, to be perfectly honest. And the Lord
Right.
saved me from that because I have a bunch of kids. There's literally not an option for me to ever reach this level of like emotional and mental masturbation that these people just perpetually live in, where it's like just me and my feelings and my
Right.
experience. Oh,
It's Spit Kiken said, send it with your Christmas cards. Oh my gosh.
I feel like
Frankie.
there's going to be a TikTok of girls sending each other their termination vlogs or whatever as
Oh,
Christmas cards, like with photos, and they'll be like, "Oh, it was so healing to document my journey."
oh
Sorry.
my gosh. Frankie D throws in another $20. Thank you so much, Frankie D. God bless you, brother. He says, talking to women who engage in noose destroying activity, I notice they speak a lot about soothing and healing and calming. I never feel I need to be soothed after a divine liturgy. Doing evil causes the need for healing. That's a great point.
Yep.
Again, trying to, because if you go to, and I saw this when we were on the TikTok, if you go to some of these ritual magic discussing termination, you look at the comments, and so many women talk about how they had a horrifying experience or how they did this and they felt bad or they were depressed for a long time. And, oh, I'm so thankful you're talking about this because I did it and I was
Yeah.
depressed for months. And it's like, well, maybe you should self-reflect on that for a little bit.
Yeah, for all of the self-reflecting on their journey and their experience, they don't seem to pick up on the fact that maybe if you're horribly depressed and feeling anxious and terrible about something you did, it's because it wasn't a good thing to do. I mean, that could be the case. But there's always this over reliance on like my internal experience and my emotions and my journey and me. Everything is like so self-focused, and I honestly think that's where a lot of the depression and anxiety comes from. That's just got to be miserable to live like that.
Well, absolutely. And Christianity teaches us that we find the most meaning in our lives when we're living for other people. I mean, that's ultimately what we do when we die, to live for Christ. And that gives
Yeah.
your life meaning. But then when you have children, when you get married, your family, your friends, like the goal for us Christians is to be of service to other people. And so it's not constantly about my own, grandizing my own passions and my own desires and wishes. It's about serving other people the best of my ability. And that gives your life so much more meaning. And it's so much deeper than this sort of, self worship we keep seeing. Dr. Vagisil throws in $2. He says the oppressor/oppressed false dichotomy in Marxism is used by feminism to poison women's minds, to always be combative to husbands if they lead. In reality, he is actually giving her protection and genuine love and sacrifice. True.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Continuing on here, we're almost towards the end of the stream. So, guys, smash that like for everybody who's here. Everybody who's still here, I respect you guys for being able to stomach today's topic, and truly appreciate all the support, guys. Thank you very, very much. So, next one I highlighted something that everybody's been already speaking about in the chat is how the Satanic Temple uses termination rituals to claim religious liberty against the Texas Heartbeat Bill, and so they're upset because of the Heartbeat Bill of Texas, which essentially limits all terminations. And then they go into the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, how, again, the U.S. should respect all religions. Then it goes down here to the Satanic Temple. It says, although they do not believe and worship a literal Satan, they revere Satan, as described in the works of the English poet John Milton, and the Romantic movement, an intellectual movement that originated in the late 18th century Europe as a powerful symbol of rebellion against authority. Oh, wow. Your body, according to the Satanic Temple, is inviolable subject of one's own will alone. It interprets state restrictions on termination access as a burden on the sincerely held religious belief. The Satanic Temple argued that this practice was an unconstitutional effort by the state to impose its religious views onto vulnerable women. Furthermore, it claimed that under Missouri's RFRA laws, satanic women could not be forced to comply with these procedures. Instead, for answering whether RFRA protected members of the Satanic Temple from termination restrictions, the court dismissed the cases on procedural grounds. Since termination is part of the ritual, the Satanic Temple argues subjecting a woman to a waiting period is akin to the government interfering with a baptism or a communion. Yes, because they're definitely the exact same thing. In
Yeah.
February 2021, the Satanic Temple filed a new lawsuit against Texas, arguing that the state was violating their religious liberties of its new plaintiff, referred to as Ann Doe. The devil's in the details. Oh gosh. So you guys get it. And you guys can look all this stuff up if you want. So we see that it's a central part of the Satanic Temple, and I just have some more. We don't need to read any. You get the point, but I was just highlighting the prevalence of this stuff. And so this was an article that I found doing, again, in preparation. It says the modern worship of Moloch. I thought this was interesting. And so I looked to see, when was this thing written? February 9th of 1926. So this is earlier in the 20th century. And I thought one of the interesting points, because it's talking about how the loss of Christian ethics and stuff like this in American culture. And then I wanted to read this paragraph. The excessive individualism of the present day. This is the beginning of the 20th century, guys. This is 1926. This is like in the middle of the Flappers. This is the Great Gatsby. The excessive individualism of the present day may also be named as a contributing cause of the moral delinquency of society. It is an individualism of sensuality, for which man, with his momentary whims, passions, and impulses, is the sole arbiter of moral values. Exactly what we see today. Its central doctrine is that man is the result of a selective evolutionary process, and that what he is by nature is what he should be, and that in following the dictates of his natural impulses, he will find his destiny. Many are deceived by this sophistry, not realizing that since natural is usually taken to mean impulses pertaining to an animalistic nature, the impulses of the natural man, if followed, are sure to lead to mere gratification of the senses and not to the development of a noble character, such as the Creator intended man should have when he created him upright and therefore different from the other members of the animal kingdom. And so I really like this. Was clearly a Christian writing this article. But just wanted to highlight that to see that this isn't new. I mean, they're literally writing about this in February 1926.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, actually.
So here I found on a Jewish website, abortion and Judaism. The Jewish position on abortion is nuanced, neither condoning it nor categorically prohibiting it. It says here that according to a 2015 Pew Research survey, found that 83% of American Jews, more than any other religious group in America, say that abortion, quote, should be legal in all, at least most cases. And so is Judaism pro-choice or pro-life? They highlight that there's different opinions depending on which group of Jews you ask. Sources in the Talmud indicate that prior to 40 days of gestation, the fetus has an even more limited legal status, with one Talmudic authority asserting that prior to 40 days, the fetus is mere water. Elsewhere, the Talmud indicates that ancient rabbis regarded a fetus as part of its mother throughout the pregnancy, dependent fully on her for its life, a view that echoes the position that women should be free to make decisions concerning their own bodies. Now, it goes down here. And does Jewish law ever explicitly permit abortions? Yes. And it highlights that that the Orthodox Jews, however, these rulings are not universally accepted, and many Orthodox rabbis are cautious about laying down firm standards, insisting instead that cases be judged individually. It highlights that there are many voices within Judaism that are totally against it. And we can see, even for his detriments, Ben Shapiro being one of these Orthodox Jews that is more on the side of pro-life as opposed to pro-choice. They highlight that the Torah does not address the issue directly. And then Exodus 21:23, concerning the case in which two men are fighting over an injured pregnant woman, that they just have to pay compensatory damages. Talk about a little bit, again, contraception, stuff like this. So they highlight that, yeah, it's a nuanced opinion, but Is abortion illegal in Israel? Yes. All Israeli women seeking to terminate a pregnancy and have it paid for through the state health insurance must appear before a 3-person committee, but in practice, nearly all requests are granted. There are no laws limiting when a termination can be performed, and a woman whose request is denied by the committee can still seek a termination at a private clinic. Estimates are about half of the terminations performed in Israel are done in private clinics. As of 2014, terminations were paid for entirely by the state for women aged 20 to 33, and subsidized terminations were granted for those outside that age range.
That's crazy. It's just so crazy.
So, not wanting to get too much in this topic, but I wanted to highlight something to people about there is a little bit of a celebration in 1933 at Soldier Field in Chicago. It was called the Romance of the People, and it performed a mock child sacrifice to Moloch. Now, I'm not going to say any more about the tradition or what they feel about anything, but it is interesting to note that the first president or prime minister of Israel was in attendance to this. And I wanted to show you guys a little bit of what it looked like. I'm not going to play the whole video, but you guys can kind of get a feel for it here. It was kind of making its rounds around X. And so you can see a large gathering here at Soldier Field. It was over, I think it was, over 100,000 people. And so we see Moloch being wheeled in. We see a sort of dancing and celebration. And then here, and if you watch the video, this has music over it. There's a loud shrieking noise like somebody is crying out, and they place this mock child. You can see it's not a real child. It's too large, but they place it on a sort of mock Moloch offering. So interesting to say the least, but that basically concludes everything that I wanted to highlight today. Rachel, how do you want to close to today's stream? Anything you want to say particularly?
Yeah. So again, the reason that I found all of this stuff was because I'm preparing to give this little talk on why we're seeing a huge resurgence in pagan earth worship, goddess religion, how it's tied in with all of the social revolutionary stuff. The mother of all revolutions is feminism, and how Christianity as a patriarchal religion, which explicitly, Patrick went over all these different, Bible verses that explicitly forbid this. They are opposite ends of the spectrum. They are completely like contradictory toward one another, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in America, because America was, as I cover in my book, this is probably the biggest criticism I get about the book is, Protestants and even some Roman Catholics get very upset because I take a whole chapter to say, hey, there's a little bit of a problem with the founding, in the way that some of the most radical, heretical Protestants are the ones who came here and wanted this liberal, progressive constitution that we have. I know the boomers don't like to hear that either, but it enshrines religious freedom. And what we're seeing now, and we've been seeing this for a while, but especially now, we're seeing feminist groups, we're seeing indigenous activist groups, we're seeing the Satanic Temple, all band together under this religious freedom part of the Constitution and say, hey, if we say, and we have a historical precedent going back to ancient times saying that termination is a ritual practice for us, a ritual religious practice, you cannot limit it. Which, as we discussed earlier, sometimes it wasn't just, fetuses. Sometimes these were post-birth humans that this was happening with. Where is this going? When is it going to stop? It's just interesting to look at where things are headed, and the fact that even so many Christians in America feel like, well, we have to allow for this. We have to, we'll just go to our church and we'll pray and we won't do it, but we're just going to allow it because my freedom and my liberty and all this sort of thing. So to me, it was just like, well, this is obviously where feminism was going to go. This was the whole point. That's why I wrote a whole book about how even the first wave might have been the worst, because even back then they were talking about this as a sacrament and rites for this sort of thing, and that what we need to do is completely get rid of Christianity, destroy its influence altogether, so that we can have total liberation, total sexual liberation, total you know, this ritual liberation that we're seeing right now. So it kind of leaves American evangelicals with no leg to stand on to stop any of it. And I just don't know. I'm wondering what you think, like when you're looking at the way that things are going right now and the way that the society is going, and what we should do about it. People always ask me that, like, what should we do, Rach? And I'm like,
Well, one of the things, I believe it was St. Paisios prophesies that as we enter into the end times, I'm not saying we are officially there. Certainly we're closer than we were yesterday. I'll just put it that way. He said that Orthodoxy would prosper and we would begin to get a lot of converts. And even my priest today, and again, my priest is 91. He just celebrated his birthday, but he highlighted that according to him, or at least a diocese letter that was going around, that the Antiochian church, and maybe it was Orthodoxy generally speaking, but it's up 67% in the last couple of years. So
yeah,
that's a significant increase of people actually joining the church, going through the catechism process and being baptized into the church. And so I'm not hopeful about the future in regards to us reversing some of these things. I hope we can. And I think it's on our salvation to fight to do that, whether we are able to do it or not. I think that's part of the honor of being morally upright, is whether we're going to be successful or not, we need to try.
yeah,
I'm skeptical if we're going to be able to. But it should be a reminder to everybody to see where we came from in regards to pre-Christian civilization and where we're going, and how there's so many similarities, and that Christ, as we talked about, whether it be the TikTok, witch talk people, is never part of their ecumenical world religions of peace and
yeah,
prosper, because they know innately that Christianity is inherently patriarchal, and they hate that. Yet again, they'll side with Hamas or what they call freedom fighters or whatnot.
yeah,
Again, these false dialectics. But I think it is going to potentially get worse. I'm skeptical if we're even going to have an election in 2024. I've said this before, and I don't mean to be a doom and gloom, guys. That's why you got to be a Christian. That's why you got to go to church. You got to become
yeah,
Orthodox, because really, I'm not a negative person, despite me being aware of all this stuff. And I know, Rachel, you're not,
right,
because there's hope. There's hope for
yeah,
your life. There's hope for your soul. There's hope for your family. There's hope for those who do the right thing. And I think if you have that moral compass, and if you have Christ in your life and you have the church, there is the church, the body of Christ, is a sanctuary for us, and we can find refuge there from this world. And I think I'm very hopeful about the expansion of Orthodoxy and more people
yeah,
coming. In regards to the general tendency of modern culture, Western culture, generally speaking, I'm not as hopeful.
yeah. Yeah, I think one of the good things about being a history nerd is that you have a much bigger view and you can zoom out and kind of say, well, this isn't the first time, right? This isn't the
Right.
first time that, I mean, we just talked about how in the ancient world, paganism was the dominant force and everyone was doing this, and it was incredibly common in all cultures all around the world to do this. And yes, it's seeing a revival now, but Christianity crushed this stuff once upon a time, and
Right.
maybe that will happen again. And like you said, since the radical Protestant reformer stuff hasn't really worked out, though, like that type of Christianity is most on the decline of all the different types, according
Yep.
to Pew Research. So maybe that will actually pave a way for authentic Christianity and give a reason for people to seek it out and look for it when things are this crazy, when you are going to have a child and trying to raise that child, and you're trying to keep them off of witch talk and explain to them, why they shouldn't do that. Evangelicalism doesn't really hold up. So I'm hoping that means a lot more people will seek orthodoxy, and they have been. I think when they did the last big Pew study, orthodoxy was like 0.3% of Americans, and now it's like 1%. That's a
Yeah.
huge increase in less than 10
And it's
years.
not from immigration.
No.
Right, because historically the Orthodox communities were immigrant communities. Those are Americans converting to the Orthodox Church,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that is hopeful. And I pray that we do overturn it. I would love, I don't, that's where we can't be accelerationists. This is
Right.
not a Christian perspective.
No.
And we see this with the doom and gloom, the black pill community. And you even see it in the orthosphere.
Yep.
Like, that's a weak mentality. And you're somebody I don't want to be in a foxhole with. I want to be with somebody
Yeah.
that's willing to die for what's right. And if
Right.
you're afraid, well, we might as well just, dude, get out of here. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be around you. You're not a man. You're not honorable. There's no honor in somebody who just doesn't want to fight and just wants to accelerate it to get to the end times or whatever. This is weak male behavior and mentality. I hope we
I
can.
would say
God
the
willing,
same
we
thing.
can.
I would say the same thing about women. You were born in a time and place. Like, people ask me this all the time. How can you have children in a time and place such as this when everything is so bad? And it's like, first of all, calm down, because it was a lot harder for my great great grandma to have 4 kids, in the late 1800s than it is for me now. There was a lot of things about having them that was harder then than it is for me now. Yeah, the social decay is a problem, but we believe that God's providence for our lives is that we were born in this time and place to help combat these things, to help
Right.
give light and hope to the world. That's what we're here for. We don't
Amen.
get to check out, and we don't get to. This is another fatal flaw that all of the those Protestant reformers I was talking about did. They tried to form breakaway communities. They thought the world was evil and bad too, and they're like, we're going to go over here and start a commune and be different than everyone and try to form a. I mean, even Mormons to a large extent kind of did that. There was a lot of that going on in the mid 1800s. So that's not the answer either. And all hope is not lost.
No.
Yes, there's witch talk, and yes, it's bad. But I mean, if it helps you guys feel better, just know that I get dozens of emails and DMs and even letters in the mail every week from young women who are saying, you know what? I always wanted to have a family and get married. I just didn't feel like it was an acceptable choice. And then, I saw you on Church of the Eternal logo. So I read your stuff here. Or I saw your stuff there. And now I feel like I can defend the choice to be a wife and mother. And I'm pregnant with my first baby, got married last year. We're baptized. I hear this all the time. So there's lots of people who know that this stuff is bad and they want something else. And to those who seek, they're going to find it, right? The Bible says if you're looking for that, you're going to find it. So all is definitely not lost, and we know who wins in the end. But in the meantime, it's our job to try to prevent more and more souls from going into witch talk and doing ritual termination. Okay. It's like why we need to be on here talking about this, even though some people aren't going to like it.
Right. And that also includes having charity and mercy and compassion for those that maybe, I guarantee there's going to be girls that maybe they are or were into things related to or adjacent to witch talk that in a year from now, they could be a totally different person. And I've talked to young women, again, almost all of them are aware of your stuff, but and that's why we need to be the church and we need to welcome people. They can't stay as who they are, but they can come as who they are. And as long as they choose to change and grow towards Christ. So at the same time, we need to have mercy for people. But that's why I say as men, you can't take a step back, not a single step back from the faith, from what's right. And guys, we're going to be persecuted, and becoming Orthodox, for example, does not make life easier. And spiritual attacks and weird things happen. It makes life more difficult, but I guarantee your life will have more meaning and you'll have more of a backbone because you'll have God with you to give you strength. And so there's hope. There's always hope, no matter if the world gets absolutely worse 100 times from this point forward. You got to have hope and you got to have Christ. And there's always potential. And I love how you highlighted that our providence is to be here and now. You weren't born in the 1950s or lived through the 1950s. You weren't born in the the 4th century. You weren't part of the Byzantine Empire. You're born now in America or the Western world or whoever's hearing this message around the world. And what are you going to do with it? Are you going to earn your salvation? Not that you have to earn it. Christ did it, but you have free will and you have choice. What are you going to do with it? And what choices are you going to make?
Yeah, exactly.
Last few super chats that came in, and then we'll hop off here. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. And 3 hours. Gosh, every time we get together, it goes 3 hours. I swear. Mr. Epics throws in $2, and he throws in another super chat for $5 and says, the history of a people thing was just a general historical play of certain history, including the bad parts like Moloch. Exactly. And, you know, many people have chosen to convert. And again, according to prophecy, we believe that many Jewish people will convert to the Orthodox Church. But you can't have hate either. So you can't hate people. And that's another thing that I worry about with the orthosphere. With, again, I talked about the Ben Shapiro and Candace Owen thing in this Overton window shift, which is clearly happening. We're seeing rhetoric online that we haven't, normie people becoming more aware of stuff or noticing things, but you can't hate people. There's no place to hate people. You can always speak the truth, always stand up for tradition. But I'm seeing too many people with Orthodox crosses being deliberately hateful towards people, and that doesn't do good for the church. You're not a good representative, and certainly that's not Christ-like. But at the same time, we're not pacifists, and we're not weak, and we're not going to be these spineless Christians and Protestants that just allow culture to walk over us. So there's a middle path, the royal path, and we have to choose that.
Yes, I agree.
Go ahead. Did you say something?
I was just wholeheartedly agreeing with all of that. Because sometimes people will listen to my stuff and they'll be like, I knew women were evil. I hate all of them. And I'm like, no, that's not, so it's like, you can't just take a group and be like, aha, this group is the singular problem for everything that's bad. No, demonic deception works on everyone of all groups in all places and all times. And we can point those things out. It doesn't mean that there's a group that's all women are not inherently bad, all men are not inherently bad, all people of a certain race or ethnicity or religion are not just evil, bad people. But that's why we have long streams like this to talk about what is the evil, where is it, what is the problem, but Christianity is a universal religion that believes that all people can be saved. So that includes everyone.
Yes, absolutely. And we have to remember too, just the same thing is true in regards to providence of wherever you're born, your race, your ethnicity, where you're from. The same thing is true with people that are born in different groups that maybe you are critical of for one reason or another. They didn't choose their parents. That's God's providence. And we have to be you need a bigger perspective here to see how the world's working. There, certain things can be true about certain groups of people with certain intentions, but the average person, you can't hate somebody because you don't know that their providence is, you don't know why God put them in for whatever reason, XYZ. Mr. Smirk says, great stream, DPH. By the way, did my last super chat go through? Oh, let me check, brother. I thought oh, yeah, I missed one. Sorry. Mr. Smirks threw in $5, says the Aztecs were at their peak of human sacrifice when the conquistadors arrived. God will always serve justice. Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe that's true for us. Maybe all this rhetoric about the end times and the apocalypse, maybe it's in 1,000 years from now. We don't know, so maybe everything we're talking about, we're going to be able to change the tone and tenor of our culture and move it back to a more Christ-centered world. Maybe we won't, but we have to try and see where the pieces fall. So thank you very much.
There's no way to know that. We don't even know if the United States as the entity that it is right now is going to still exist in 100 years from now. There's any number of things that could happen. There's always talk of all kinds of, I don't want to use trigger words, but there's always talk of breaking things up into other regions. And how can any of us right now say what it's going to be 100 years from now? Because my grandmother is 97 and she said if you would have told her that things would be the way they are now when she was like 5, she would have never believed you. So you just don't know. You just have no idea.
Right. And Big Balla threw in $5 over on Streamlabs and said, truly, we are in a fallen world. Absolutely. And we had another one come in over on Dono Chat for $15. Another anonymous super chatter says, is it, quote, strong language to them, the baby bond for 8 years with mother for the baby's sake, then confined the attempted murderer after the fact, barring genuine repentance. 70 million worldwide? Question mark. Wow. Yeah. So I didn't catch the first part though. Is it strong language to them, the baby bond for 8 years with mother for the baby's sake, then confined the attempted murderer after the fact, barring genuine repentance? I think you're saying, I don't know, I don't know of many people that are terminating after 8 years of having a child, but thank you, Anonymous Super Chatter, for the $15 super chat. I do appreciate it. God bless you and yours. And then Tatiana, our Orthodox sister, threw in another $2, says, thanks for reminding us to love even our enemies. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what makes us different. And you just never know. You never know. So, Rachel, thank you so much. Again, click her go subscribe to her YouTube channel. I will put the link in the video description for everybody. Go buy her book. How can they support you? What can you shill? Shill something for us. Get her sweatshirt.
Yeah, you can go to the Crucible merch store and get a Based Homeschool Mom t-shirt if you want to. Or you can go to my Substack, rwilson.substack.com. You can subscribe there and read my stuff. I'm going to be putting out more soon. I think I will share also this piece that I'm writing for this theological seminary journal on there at some point, or at least share links to it and stuff like that. There is a second book coming, I promise. I keep getting all these giant projects plopped in my lap and it keeps getting kicked the can down the road. But it's almost winter in Michigan, so I'll have nothing to do but sit inside and write and stuff. So I'm going to finish that. I want it to be out by next spring. And I'm going to start doing more streams after the holidays, but I'm a mom and it's holiday time and I'm going to be real busy. So also subscribe to the Crucible. Go to the Crucible and watch my husband because he's fantastic.
There you go. Go subscribe to the Crucible. Help Rachel out. Thomas Henderson, God bless you, brother. And he says, thank you, Patrick and Rachel, for another great show. Thank you. Frankie D throws in another $3. Thank you so much, Frankie D. He says, wanted to join Orthodoxy because of the evil I saw, and I learned about the sources of some things. Learned later that the problem was me. God have mercy on me. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's our own sins that contributed to the degeneracy around us. So thank you so much, Frankie D, for all the support tonight, brother. I really do appreciate it. And thank you to everybody. People are very supportive tonight. Shout out to Bang Bang Lulu, became a COTEL crew member. Shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much for joining the team. Enjoy all the emojis. Really appreciate all the support. Frankie D said, been watching Andrew kill it over there. Yeah, he's been doing great. So thank you guys so much. Go support Rachel, go support the Crucible, support everybody. Oh, First Person Q gifts a COTEL crew membership. Thank you so much, First Person Q. I really appreciate that, brother. God bless you. And that's going to do it for tonight, guys. Just let me double check, make sure nobody sent anything in before we hop off. We are good. So thank you all very, very much. I will be back potentially. We got a sponsored stream next week, as well as I want to dive into a little bit something called the Monroe Institute, and we'll be looking at remote viewing and CIA research. So we should be doing that sometime next week. And for everybody in America, next week is Thanksgiving. I wish you guys all the best. Enjoy time with your family. So I will see you all next week, probably Tuesday. So as always, until then, God bless.